Chairman, Tom Manley.
And we're bouncing over here, I think, right? We'll start back here with Randy.
Sure. Randy Idy, City of Menominee Public Works.
Tim Leon, County Board.
Mark Teach, Chair of Fund Grant.
Forrest?
Forrest Johnson, Town of Dunn Chairman.
Randy Prochnow, County Board. Jim Richards, Supervisor, Red Cedar.
Deb Gottliebson, Supervisor, Red Cedar.
Do we have any other municipal representatives in the back of the room that would like to introduce themselves? Or yeah,
John Schaefer, Chair, Springbrook.
Leanne Ralph, Town of Otter Creek.
so back.
Harry Warden, Town of Rock
Right
Creek.
here. Anyone else? Yes.
Gib Kruger, Village of Boystown.
Great. Thank you. All right. I'd like to introduce my staff as well. If we haven't met before, my name is Morgan Girk. I'm the director for the Solid Waste and Recycling Program. Diane Durst right here. If you want to stand up, Diane, this is my support specialist. Diane works very hard in processing all of our bills and all of our interactions with the public. She handles our shipping, scheduling, and processing there. And then we've got Megan Hines right here. Megan is our recycling specialist. She's been with us a little over a year now. She came in after Amanda Haffley, our former recycling specialist, left for Portage County. Megan was the recycling specialist for St. Croix County, so she came right into the program with a wealth of experience, and it was a plug-and-play situation, so we really appreciated that. And then over here, we've got Mike Larson. Mike is my resource recovery specialist. So Mike works at the transfer station and all the collection sites, making sure that we're moving product around as efficiently as possible, make sure we're meeting our production schedules so that we can bale and sell our commodities back to market. And then Mark Nelson in the yellow here. Mark is our project coordinator for our contracted staff through the L.E. Phillips Career Development Center. All of our collection sites and the transfer station are run by contracted labor, not county staff. So that's a dynamic that we've had in the county for a long time. So, okay, with that, we want to get into the meat of the discussion here. So one thing I wanted to show you before we get into the agenda is I was contacted 2 days ago by Channel 18 News, and they wanted to do a piece on the recycling crisis and how that's affecting local governments and local municipalities and how severe of an issue this really is. So most of you know that recycling, the ability to sell recyclables and the cost of producing recyclables is really a problem at the moment. So several years ago, China began implementing programs where they would no longer accept recycling from the world. America produces a tremendous amount of recyclables, and China stopped taking them along with all the other global markets as well. China was the global processor of most recycling. It was a tremendous amount of material that they were processing and producing there. The problem is that countries, including America, were just as at fault as other countries, maybe worse in some cases, is that we were sending them low quality and contaminated materials because China really didn't have the checks and balances in place to do quality control on the materials they received. And it became an environmental crisis in China. They had so much contaminated material and they were losing so much money on the proposition, they said, you know what, we're going to stop. And they just put a stop-gap measure on that and just refused to take recycling unless you could meet an unrealistic expectation for 0.5 of 1% contamination in your material. Now, there's probably not a single processing operation, whether it's a transfer station, a MRF, or recycling center, whatever, that can make a 0.5 of 1% pure bale. You could probably do it if you hand sorted each piece. 3,000 to 4,000 cans went through your hand to make a bale, and there's nothing else in the machine to contaminate it, but very unrealistic. So all of a sudden, recycling stopped. All of the recycling didn't stop. The material was still being produced, but the avenue to move the recycling completely went away. Now, you'll ask the question, why don't we just process this in the United States? That's a great question. The reason is, for so long, China was such a convenient vector for all of our recycling, we didn't have to develop the infrastructure in the United States to process all of our waste material and our recyclable material. We had an easy avenue to just shuttle it out the door, collect a check for whatever commodity price was being paid, and make it from new material with the cash that we received. So we never prepared in America for the infrastructure to recycle and manufacture products coming from the recycling stream. So we have a problem. And the problem is that we've got this huge glut of materials stacked up in our shipping ports and in our material recovery facilities, at our transfer station, right? Any of you who have been to our transfer station, mountains of bales everywhere. Recycling is still happening, but it's happening on a much slower pace because there is just a small handful of processors in the United States that can even begin to process a fraction of the material that's out there. Whenever you have that situation where there's a glut of materials available, all of the people who buy those materials will only buy the absolute highest quality material at the absolute lowest price. And that's what's happening right now. So we are in a 30-year, think about that for a second, a 30-year low on recycling processing in this country. We are literally going back that far in pricing. So now there is a silver lining, I believe. I'm an optimist. So one thing I will say is that America is the land of innovation. We always have been. And I think that what's happening now is you're starting to see businesses and investors invest in solutions and infrastructures to be able to start processing this glut of materials that's available to us. If we create it, we need to be able to process it and recycle it properly, create a cyclic economy for all of the industrial materials and recycling materials that we produce. And that's what's happening. Unfortunately, it's going to happen at a snail's pace. To put that amount of energy and finances into infrastructures to process that amount of material in a short period of time, unrealistic. So it's going to take time to do this. And until that time, when we can process adequate amounts of these materials in the United States, these prices are going to stay stagnant or even lower. To give you an idea of where we're at right now, several years ago, we were getting nearly $200 a ton for a bale of cardboard. It is now costing us about $60 a bale just to make it. Okay, that is where we were receiving $200 per ton before. It's costing me $60 a bale just to make one. Cardboard is a mandated recyclable, so the state says you've got to do cardboard. So even if I said, hey, we shouldn't be doing cardboard anymore, not that I would, but I wouldn't be able to do it because the state mandates it. Scrap steel. Scrap steel is always a good money maker for recycleries. Scrap steel right now is $10 a ton. So if you think about that, you can get about 30 tons of scrap steel in a 30-yard scrap steel dumpster. You're losing money the second that you hook a chain up to that roll-off and put it on a truck. There's just all of the cost in recycling is in processing and it's in transportation. And right now, the transportation industry is so stressed for a variety of reasons that it's hard enough just to find transportation companies to move your stuff. And when the cost of commodities are so low, the price of commodities are so low, the second you even look at that container, you're upside down on your revenue, right? You're basically paying to move that material just for the privilege of recycling it. So we have a crisis on our hands. And this is not a Dunn County crisis. This is not a Wisconsin crisis. It's a national crisis. It's a global crisis. The whole globe is feeling the pinch on this, and everybody's struggling to try to figure out a way to balance this out, work through this glut of material, race to get the new infrastructure processing structure in place so that we can actually begin recycling properly again. Here's another interesting one. So cardboard and paper recycling in Wisconsin. All of the cardboard and paper fiber and the carrier stock that we produce goes to local mills in Wisconsin for the most part. Now, China is starving for paper pulp, okay? But they can't take our paper bales, they can't take our cardboard bales anymore because of their own rules that they've set, and additionally, the aggravation that's going on between our political organizations right now, the tariffs, the trade wars, et cetera, et cetera. It's not helping things at all. It's not helping get through the fog of the China sword. So there is a conglomerate in China called 9 Dragons Nine Dragons is a huge institution that has come to America, has bought several paper mills in the Midwest. I believe there's 2 in Wisconsin. And to get around this recycling commodity problem, they're buying old paper mills, they're refurbishing them, they're buying up American cardboard and paper, they're pulping it in our mills, and then they're sending it as a slurry into tanker ships and shipping it back to China as a new commodity. Now that is a super interesting and expensive workaround, right? Rather than just being able to receive nice clean baled materials from the United States, right? Lots of money being spent there as a workaround for the current situation. Is that sustainable? Well, it's only sustainable based on how deep your pockets are. Nine Dragons got some deep, deep pockets, but so when we talk about sustainability, Dunn County has always had a really, really robust and environmentally conscientious recycling program and a good solid waste program as well. We've sustained our level of services and pricing in the county through allocations of our budget to help support those processes, to help support curbside, to help support the collection sites, to help support the yard waste sites, et cetera, et cetera. Because we've been hit so hard by markets, recycling markets being essentially non-existent right now, costs of our hauling, costs of our corrective maintenance are skyrocketing. We have facilities that are approaching 30 years of operation in the county, so we are essentially end of life at our transfer station on Highway 29. The building is demanding constant corrective maintenance out there. If we don't figure out how to generate more revenue and maximize our efficiencies and minimize our costs, we won't be here for you in this county. And it pains me to say that, but the reality is this is a very, very expensive business to run, and historically we have not passed on the real cost of recycling and waste management in Dunn County as a whole. And the time for that has changed. So I just wanted to mention that to just kind of get your minds in the right place for what we're going to talk about tonight, this alternative business proposal that we have for you to consider tonight. And we certainly want the input and solicitation from the municipalities on what they think of the data that we're going to present to you tonight. But I wanted to start with the video from Channel 18. This was actually on the 6 and 10 o'clock news last night.
First at 10, what's being called a recycling crisis in an area county. Dunn County has lost more than $250,000 this year alone on recycling costs. As Jess Langler reports, this global problem will require local solutions to keep recycling programs afloat.
The value of recycled material has plummeted over the past few years, and the result is what Dunn County officials are calling a recycling crisis. Roughly 40% of the world's recyclables end up getting shipped to China because places like the U.S. don't have proper facilities to process them. But in 2017, China changed the amount of contamination it allows in imported recycled materials to levels most American facilities can't meet.
We have a huge glut of materials in the United States now because we don't have China to take them all from us and process them.
Dirk says the price of recycled materials is at a 30-year low and says Dunn County needed to make a budget adjustment of $290,000 in 2019 to account for the losses.
And the pricing's so low, we're actually paying about $50 to $60 just to make a bale of cardboard. We're actually losing that.
Girk says the county will likely reduce hours of operation at collection stations to start reducing costs as soon as possible, and is discussing possible fee increases. He says a referendum on possibly raising property taxes may be necessary in 2020 to sustain the program long term. In the meantime, he says there are things that you can do right now to keep recycling costs down.
So the more we can clean the recycling stream up front at the curbside, right, or at the drop-off sites here at their homes, the more efficient we're going to be at processing clean materials that we don't have to constantly fish out of our process.
He says learning the items that can and can't be recycled in your community also increases the value of recycled materials.
Now, Dunn County is hosting a special meeting tomorrow night to get input from residents and to start working on a plan to address the recycling problems there.
So you never know what you're going to get after you do an interview with the news, but I think they nailed most of that pretty well. We're going to talk about the budget adjustment that we had to do for 2019. Not all of that was because of recycling market. Some of that was just overages in our operations. Being able to maintain the hours of service and the types of services that we provide to the residents of Dunn County and all of our participating municipalities. So, but with that, we've sent out a lot of documentation ahead of the meeting. I'm sorry it didn't get out to you sooner. It's just been a whirlwind here the past couple weeks working through all of these metrics and ideas. So we wanted to go through the agenda real quick and then do some public comments. So that portion is coming up. But you know, when we talk about this discussion of the proposed alternative business model, why is it needed? I think I just kind of prefaced that discussion for why we need to look at this and make some modifications. The recycling crisis, I explained that. The operational considerations of the alternative business model. So let me make this absolutely clear. We are proposing reduced hours and reduced days of operation at our collection sites. We've had the Cadillac of solid waste and recycling program, for a long, long time. The per capita and the fees associated with our program haven't steadily rose to the point where we were creating the revenues that we need to support operations into the future. So all the cost increases that we've been seeing haven't realistically been expressed in per capita. And some of the ways that that's been done, this might be surprising to some. All of our collection sites, the model that's been in place for decades, the collection sites were never intended to make enough money to support themselves. They were subsidized through the other fees that we receive through the per capita that you contribute and our shipping fees and our recycling fees at the transfer station, and another really big one, the sale of recyclables, right? So we're going to discuss the history of the sales of recyclables, just a couple of charts to show you how really bad that's gotten. We used to make a lot more money on recyclables in this county. We also used to get a much larger recycling grant from the state. That's essentially been cut in half. So we are not the only ones struggling with this crisis. Like I said, this is a global problem, an international problem. It's a huge problem for local governments and responsible units like ourselves. So what are the impacts to some of the municipalities? Well, we're going to have a robust discussion on how that could potentially impact your residents and your collection sites. I want to know what your most valuable services are, what you perceive as the most valuable services that we provide to you. I want to hear what you find important in our programs and what you think, what you would suggest maybe we cut. Maybe you don't want us to cut anything, but we'll talk about mandated versus non-mandated recycling. Again, that means Wisconsin law, Wisconsin statute says you will recycle this, 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 and this. And I'll go through what this, and this is. Versus non-mandated program. We have a lot of recycling opportunities in Dunn County that we've put in place here. Whole variety of things that are non-mandated. Those are great from a diversification standpoint and outstanding from an environmental stewardship standpoint. You should all be very, very proud of the level of recycling that we do in the county, but it all comes at a cost. We talked about environmental stewardship, maintaining current model services. That's really, really going to be difficult to do unless we discuss some alternative funding models, which would include increases to per capita. We'll talk a little bit about that. Opportunities for additional clean sweep events with zero fees for paints, bulbs, ballasts, cylinders, anything. We want to do that for you. During our 2019 clean sweep, which was a record, we put a survey there asking participants if they would consider paying a $6.25 per household per capita increase for the purpose of having 2 clean sweeps each year with zero fees. So no more waiting in line for latex paint fees for us to look at the cans and figure out if it's oil-based or latex. All fees go away. We unload your car as fast as you pull up and scoot you out the back door. We would really improve efficiency there, plus it's much more easy on your pocketbooks. But we have to do that, gaining some additional funding through an increase in per capita. So we'll talk about that. And we talked about the survey. 85% of people supported that, that option. So, okay, so that's kind of setting the stage for the discussion that we're going to have tonight. So we wanted to open this up for public comment now. If you have any questions about the material that you received before, or if you have any comments that you'd like to just preface the coming conversation with, please feel free. So, Gary,
I think I'd like to go through your plans first, and you'll have public comment afterwards, because then they know exactly what's going on.
Sure, we can do
Is
that.
that be okay?
You bet. Okay, let's talk about our identity as a solid waste and recycling responsible unit government in Dunn County, and our budget, a little bit about our budget, a little bit about grants. So what is Dunn County solid waste and recycling? Well, first thing is, and I want to make sure we go through this because you know, some people, when I tell them this, they're like, oh, I didn't know that. So we're a non-levy special revenue fund. What that means is that we don't receive any general tax levy from the county, from county residents. We are 100% non-levy. Now, a few years ago, for a couple decades, we did get $8,000 from the Dunn County tax levy in support of our clean sweep, which we had every year. That went away in 2018. We no longer receive that money. So, and you'll see the words business there in parentheses. So, we are a business, and running a business is a little bit different than running an organization that is receiving levy and doing things a little bit differently. So as a business, we have to support ourselves 100% through our revenues. How are we generating revenues? Well, of course, the biggest one is the per capita, the contribution that you and all make through these intergovernmental agreements that we have as member municipalities. So that's a big one. Our user fees, these are things like, there are certain items that we have to pass some fees on for recycling, like televisions, electronics, tires, you know, some types of light bulbs, things like that. And then our tipping fees at the transfer station for our solid waste. Those are all ways that we collect revenue. And then the other big one, again, that we talked about earlier is sales of recycling, right? We've always been able to rely on a really good influx of the sale of recyclables. Now, we have a $2.9 million operating budget. That's what it costs to run all of these programs. It cost us a little bit more this year because of the shortfalls that we saw. Now, if we're using best management practices as a business, we should be maintaining 30% of our annual budget, the $2.9 million, to be able to keep in a savings account called a fund balance, right? So if you take 30%, which is a best management practice at $2.9 million, that means you should have $870,000 in the bank at all times as a contingency, right? It is extremely difficult for us to raise the fees high enough to maintain $870,000 in the bank, much less keep our operations going, and a small profit model so that we can continue to plug additional funds into the fund balance to be used for critical failures, purchasing of new infrastructure, etc. That is really, really difficult to do. So I risk pricing all of you completely out of this program if I applied it at any specific place. Right now we have television recycling fees between $15 and $45. Okay, TVs are very, very expensive to recycle. We don't make a whole lot of profit margin, very, very little on any of our electronics recycling. Televisions are extremely expensive to recycle because they contain two toxic metals, lead and cadmium. Whenever you recycle toxic components, there's a regulatory umbrella over that entire process, and it adds expense to that process, okay? So we have to be really careful where and how we apply these fees to all the residents of Dunn County so that we don't price them out of participation in the program. Pretty soon everything is in the ditch, potentially, right? All right, so we get the 2019 recycling grant. We get a recycling grant from the state every year. In 2019, it was $156,866. Now, we use that grant for a variety of purposes. All of it goes to support the various facets of our recycling program. Some of those grant allocations go in support of our curbside recycling, in support of our site maintenance, that sort of thing, and obviously in support of our recycling operations. We are the responsible unit for 26 member municipalities, those of you in this room. And there are some other municipalities in the county who have decided to go it alone and provide their own solid waste and or recycling services. We run 8 area collection stations throughout the county, and we have the Dunn County Transfer Station and Recycling Center on Highway 29, okay? So just a kind of an overview of who we are and what we do. All right, I talked about the recycling grant, the state recycling grant, the amount that we receive, and then I'll discuss the chart on the right as well. But this one over here, and I know it's a little gray, it's a weird color, we had to pull it off of the internet, but in Wisconsin, this is the recycling grant over time. Table 1, it starts in 1990 and it ends in 2016, 2017. So it started off at $18,500,000. That's all the recycling grants for all the municipalities in the state. That's everything. That's got to be spread out to all the responsible units now. It peaked at one point, I think, to around 32, I think that's the highest one in there, $32,098,100 there in 2011, 2012. In 2015, it was the lowest it had been since 1990 at $18,000, and in 2016, 2017, sorry, that's 2015, 2016. In 2016, 2017, it was only 1 million greater at 19,000. We have essentially gone back in time on the amount of money that we receive from the state to process recycling, and that's not a good thing. The grant, the amount of the total Wisconsin grant that we received in Dunn County is expressed in this center chart. So in 2007, we received $188,721. In 2008, $238,659. And then we stay in the 2000s. We come down here with a significant dip in 2011. We come up just a little bit. We're starting to dip back down. And right down here in 2019, we're at $156,866.50. Okay? So that's the total amount of the state recycling grant that is given to us to run our recycling operations. The chart on the right is the recycling fee collections over time. Fiscal year recycling fee collected at the landfill. So for every ton of material that's deposited at a landfill, there's some monies associated with that and recycling fees. And I'm not going to go through that chart, but there is a amount that's set aside for every ton of material that's taken to a landfill in support of recycling. So why do we need a new business model in the county? I've already gone through a lot of the reasons for that, but I talked about the budget adjustment we had to do. So for 2019, we had to do a $290,062 budget adjustment to the adopted budget that we had in place for 2019. What that means is that we went over budget by $290,062 through operations, support of our programs, et cetera, et cetera. Loss of sales from recycling. We had a $105,000 shortfall of recycling commodity sales. And one thing I want to mention, there's an inverse equation at play in our recycling processing program. For the 4th year in a row now, our recycling tonnage is going up. We're doing a hell of a job. My staff, my employees, all the contracted labor at the sites are working their tails off to process as much material as we can so we can get that out to market for sale. The problem is our production's going up and the price that's getting paid back to us is going down. So we have this type of equation happening. We don't want to see this. We want to see this, right? We want to see our tonnage increasing along with price increasing. That's how we make money. That's how we increase stewardship. That's how we maintain our programs. Right now we have this. That is a bad, bad equation to have. So the $105,000 shortfall for recycling commodity sales, we budgeted for $300,000 in the sales of recycling. That's how far we were off. Our tonnage was on. Our tonnage was past our expectation, but the costs continue to fall into oblivion and we just can't make up the funds. $185,062 shortfall for operations. That was hauling increases that we had and all of hauling from all the collection sites and the transfer station. We have over 30 contracted employees operating the collection sites, servicing you at the collection sites, making sure that they're helping you process your materials, making sure that we have good compliance, making sure that we're checking permits for everybody so that we can protect your best interests in the program, make sure we have people not using the sites who don't actually pay the per capita. We had an absolute record hazardous waste clean sweep this year, which I'm so proud of. You all did a fantastic job of participating in the clean sweep. How many people remember the clean sweep this year, right? It was amazing. It was amazing and aggravating at the same time because the traffic from the transfer station literally went all the way into the city of Menominee. That's how far the backup was. So we had record participation, and remember, we have a small facility. We have to unload each car and look at every can of stuff to determine how it's going to be processed, and that takes time. We can only do single lane traffic through the transfer station. We service 2 cars at a time. It took a long time. We opened an hour early. We stayed open, I think, 3 hours past our published time. So we got everybody processed. The day before, at the Colfax Fairgrounds was also a record, and same thing. We opened up early, we closed hours later just to process everybody. So I'm so proud that we had that level of participation. Now to put this in financial terms, we normally budget around between $24,000 and about $26,000 a year for a clean sweep. We get a grant from the Department of Agriculture, Trade and Consumer Protection, DATCAP, of $15,500 each year for the clean sweep. It varies a little bit by year. So if you take the total amount that we spent at this clean sweep was $61,866. Call it $62,000. The grant only covers $15,500. We only budgeted $26,000. We're eating all that extra cost for the clean sweep out of our budget. That contributes to the overage and the need for the budget adjustment. So what's going on there? The costs of our operations and our programs have exceeded our potential for annual revenue. And that's the crisis we're up against. We've got to figure out a way to make this business model work for you, of course, because we're here to service you, but it's got to work fiscally for us as well. So we've got to modify some things. We can't keep doing what we've been doing. If we do, we're not going to be here through 2020. That is the harsh reality. That is the take-home message tonight that we're going to discuss. So what is this alternative business model? What is it? What does it look like? How does it affect you? So it's reductions to the solid waste and recycling facility hours and or days of operations, okay? Now we've bounced this thing a million ways, and the whole time trying to make it as effective as possible for you, the people who participate in and pay into these programs. We have, trust me, we've dreamt about this for the last month, trying to, every scenario possible running through our heads, and we've burned the fingerprints off our fingers on our keyboards crunching all these numbers. So what are the pros of going to this new model? And we'll get to some spreadsheets and some handouts in a second. So the pros are that it really is necessary. This modification is necessary to control rising costs and stagnant revenues, right? Again, we don't want to fee you guys right out of our program by cranking up all the fees for everything. That's not going to work so well. We're not getting any additional revenues through recycling. As a matter of fact, we're still not in the belly of these markets yet. A 30-year low, we're still not in the bottom. That's pretty scary. The new model reduces overall contracted staff hours and training. I can tell you that to be a lead attendant at any collection site, you've got to have a wealth of knowledge on how to process materials, clean materials, make sure they're sorted, know our regulatory compliance, have the iron fist velvet glove mentality where you can work real politely and effectively with people, but you still got to toe the line checking those permits and making sure that everybody's participating properly. You got to know how to handle situations when hazardous waste shows up unexpectedly. You got to know how to work with transportation companies and haulers coming in to move your materials, communicating with the office. There's a lot of stuff that goes into training a collection site attendant. It's not somebody you just pull off the street and throw in at a site and have them run a site. It takes time. So there's investment there. We can reduce that by going to the new model. So it also reduces county staff time as site attendants. What do I mean by that? Well, when we were running everybody on the same days at the collection sites, you all have sites that run Wednesdays and Saturdays, right? That means that I've got 30 people out there all working Wednesdays and Saturdays. If any of them call in sick on those days, I've got to have backups that can get out there and plug those holes so we can keep the site open. Guess who the backup people are? Raise your hands if you're a backup attendant in this room. It's called county staff, right? So we're out there functioning as site attendants, which we don't mind doing, but the cost of us running a site is much, much higher than if we're doing that through our contracted staffing agency. We can reduce that by going to this different model. The new model supports a team approach. A northern team, a southern team, utilizing our very best, most talented and most dedicated attendants. Okay, we have 30 plus attendants out there through our staffing agency, L.E. Phillips. They're all great workers. They all work very, very hard for you and for me to make sure these programs are working good. But we're able to kind of really get down to the nitty gritty and grab the cream of the crop and build some really good, strong teams to bounce and run site to site to site, rather than having all of these two-person teams out on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So we're able to consolidate staff, give them more hours, so now we get people that are up into the 20 hours a week, 30 hours a week, rather than 4 hours a week, right? Which isn't very easy to staff sites when you're only getting 4 to 8 hours a week. So the new model creates teams where people can make more money, longer hours, and we have a more consistent approach then at our site. It also is going to result in improved hauling time frames, improved processing efficiencies at the transfer station. What I mean there is, when we're open all sites Wednesdays and Saturdays, all of the contracted hauling that we do, that's all got to be done in just a matter of a couple days. And all of the haulers got to get out to all of our sites, pull all of the recycling boxes, bring them to the transfer station, and the guys at the transfer station have to tear in there and get all those boxes processed as fast as they can, so they can get them back out to your sites for the next business day. That's a lot of work, and there's a lot of inefficiency in that process at the transfer station. What are some of the cons of going to an alternative business model? The very first one is change. Change is difficult, right? I get it, nobody likes change, and we've run such an amazing, efficient program and convenient program for all of you for decades, so change is tough. The plan from a con perspective, it's going to result in the elimination of some recycling opportunities. We do so much in this county, so many great things that I am so very proud of and so dedicated to, but they cost time, they cost dedication, they cost staff, and they're all great things, but I'm not sure that we can continue to do them all without some change. I'm going to let you decide on that tonight, but there's potential for increased traffic and site congestion. Whenever you take a collection site hours and you condense those to a smaller bandwidth, that bandwidth starts to fill up, right, with a lot more traffic, a lot more competition for resources, if you will, utilizing the boxes, recycling your materials. So longer service wait times. As you know, we have to write a receipt for every cash transaction we do for fee items. That takes time. One of the biggest challenges the attendants have is someone will be cleaning out a house and they'll bring in a full trailer behind their truck, and it'll be stacked with 20 different types of recycling and solid waste. All of it's got to be picked through in real time and disposed of or recycled properly. That takes time. And then receipts have to be written. And all that time there's people backed up behind that trailer sitting there waiting, you know, I'm trying to get in here, I got to get to work, I got to get out of here. I get it. The sites are busy. So longer service wait times, probably a reality of the improved model. All right. There's a variety of handouts tonight. For anybody who couldn't print them ahead of time, we have them on the back table there. These are what they are. 2020 sample calendar for January. Looks like that, okay? So under the proposed alternative business model, we created a January calendar that shows up what days all of your sites are working and for what hours, okay? The second one is an explanation sheet for additional per capita options for you as municipalities. If you don't like something of this proposed business model, and you'd like to consider possibly additional contributions through your per capita contribution, we can have that discussion. And then the other one are the revenue calculations from additional per capita. So we've worked out essentially a menu for you tonight to look through all the different options and how that's going to impact your specific municipality, okay? And you'll have to weigh that then on what you feel is best for your site, and we hope that you speak to that tonight. So, some other benefits of the new model. If we only work on Wednesdays and Saturdays, those are the only days we're on. You're going to see right now on that calendar, that sample calendar sheet for January, there's a lot more opportunities spread out over many more days, right? 4 days out of the week versus 2. More if you include the public drop-off at the transfer station. So there's a lot more opportunity. If for some reason you can't make it to your particular collection site in your municipality on any given day, there's a very good chance you can scoot down the road 6 or 10 miles, get to the next collection site that's open. Now, we haven't modified any of the days of operation of our 3 principal sites, Elkmont, Boyceville, and Colfax. Those will remain the same, albeit with reduced hours, but they will be open Wednesdays and Saturdays. It's the smaller satellite sites that we've plugged in on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And if you'll notice on there, there's one weekday one week and always a Saturday for you the following week. So everyone will get a Saturday and everyone will get a weekday, okay? Sand Creek. Do we have anyone here from Sand Creek tonight? Okay. Our Sand Creek site, pretty much our most remote site. It is a manned site. We have one person out there, George Keltner, a great guy. It's right next to the Sand Creek Fire Department. It's only a recycling program. They only participate in our recycling program, so we don't collect any trash. We don't collect any fee items out there. We just have 2 recycling boxes out there, one for fiber and one for containers. So, one of the things that we are proposing in the new model is that we convert the Sand Creek site to an unmanned site only. This will be the first time that we've had an unmanned site in Dunn County Solid Waste. And there's risks associated with that, big risk. And Forrest is nodding over there. He knows what's going on. So what happens when you've got a bunch of boxes out in the country and nobody watching them? Well, it's on the honor system, right? So Dunn County residents are fabulous recyclers, but there might be 1.5% of our residents who they don't always play the game so well. So, hey, that's a good opportunity for me to dump all my latex paint, or, you know, I don't know how to use this box, so everything's just going to be dumped in the hole because I don't have time to do it right. That's a risk that we run, that we take on by converting this site to an unmanned site. Where we'll see the real potential inefficiency of that is when those boxes are delivered to the transfer station. Our transfer station is so busy and that baling machine so critical to our operations that if we start getting materials from an unmanned site like Sand Creek and the box is completely combined, commingled with things, there's trash in there, the recycling is blended, it brings our process to a standstill at the transfer station because we have to fish out all of the different things in there so that we're producing a quality bale of recycling. Dunn County has an amazing reputation for making quality recycling, and that's because we are, I think, the last source-separated county in the state of Wisconsin, meaning you have to sort all your materials out. We get all those materials hauled to us through the curbside accounts as source-separated commodities, and we process them and sell them direct to industry. Anybody selling anything in this market has to make the absolute best product, most highest quality product, or your load will instantly get rejected, okay? For instance, if I ship a load of aluminum cans, if the mill that receives my load sees one steel can on the outside of one bale, guess what they do? Turn it around, we don't want it. Because if they see that steel can on the outside of a aluminum can bale, what do they think is on the inside of the bale, right? They're going to assume that you don't have a good quality control model in place at your facility. So quality is just the utmost important factor right now in being able to sell anything, even at the poor market prices that we're at. We do a very, very good quality package. So this new model that we're going to talk about tonight, this is very important to remember as well. It's based on projections, right? We can't see the future. We've got a pretty good crystal ball for things. We see trends and things like that, but we can't predict the future. So This is a best case scenario. You know, if something, if the baler shuts down at the transfer station and we got to invest $200,000 in that, we're not accounting for that in this model. We are accounting for some contingency as much as we can to sustain our operations through 2020 under the alternative business model. But if things go haywire, we're going to be in trouble in 2020. So, this best case scenario, there could be an increase to per capita that's needed in 2020. We may say, hey, we need a little help here. We need you to go back to your boards and have a discussion about an amendment to your budgets to help us out so we can get through 2020. Now, one of the things you heard in the news hit there is the Solid Waste and Recycling Management Board and the division intend to make a request in 2020 for a levy referendum so that we can get some money, tax money, to help support our program. I think it would be a little less painful to do it that way than if I start cranking up the fees on everything that we process out there. That's not an effective way of doing it. Any tax is an additional pain. I get that, and nobody wants to see that. But you can certainly spread it out a lot less painfully when you do it across a levy versus raising fees on individual items. Okay? That's a possibility coming up in 2020. Now, another reason that levy would be critical to our operations is for capital investments. I mentioned our transfer station and most of our collection sites are 28 years old. We're coming up on 30 years. That is the absolute maximum lifespan of an industrial facility such as a transfer station. And we have a fairly unique transfer station. It's not a typical transfer station. It's not an efficient transfer station. We got some really weird design things going out there. I would say cue the Simpsons music when you come in, because it's a very bizarre layout. The infrastructure was built very, very light duty, and we throw a tremendous amount of money in corrective maintenance, keeping those facilities alive. Same at the collection site, offices, all of that stuff. So we're going to have capital investment long term. If we build a new transfer station in Dunn County, remember the transfer station is the heart of our operations. Everything that is done at the collection sites, recycling-wise, comes back to the transfer station for processing. If we lose the transfer station, if for some reason the floor caves in or we get a sinkhole out there or something, and believe me, that's not as weird as it sounds, we're going to be out of luck. So long term, we need to think about the depreciation of our facilities and reinvesting capital in a new facility if we plan to be in Dunn County providing these services to all of you. That's a lot of money. A new transfer station, even a rudimentary transfer station, you're looking probably at $20 million. Now, we could never go out, even at the county's excellent rates, we couldn't bond for $20 million if we wanted right now, because we're just this little $2.9 million business that has a very, very limited potential for revenue currently. But if we got some assistance from the tax levy, in addition to the per capita, in addition to the user fees, now there's potential to go out, makes it a little more palatable for banks to look at the county in this investment and say, yeah, we're going to help you out for $20 million so you can build a new facility. That's why we're talking about referendums, so we can help sustain operations and pave the way for bonding in the future for new infrastructure, okay? All right, this is just an image of that sample 2020 January calendar. And again, it's color-coded, and I know the print is very small. It was really tough to put everybody in those little tiny boxes there. To show you where everybody, the days of operation that we're working. So again, the public drop-off continues its 3 days of operations, Mondays, Wednesdays, Saturdays, albeit with reduced hours. The three primary sites, Elk Mound, Colfax, Boyceville, also open Wednesday and Saturday, just like now, with reduced hours. Transfer station open Mondays through Saturday, again, reduced hours, but same days of operation. And then the satellite collection sites, Connorsville, Rock Creek, Downsville, and Ridgeland are working either a Tuesday or a Thursday one week and the following Saturday. So it's essentially 1 day a week that we're operating the satellite sites at. And that is going to be something that I understand could be painful for some of our municipalities. But it's not an unrealistic model Eau Claire does their program a lot like this for their smaller sites. They're open every other week, usually the first and third Saturday of the month, maybe a weekday here and there. So, but the beauty of looking at that is there's a lot of opportunity throughout the week on that calendar. Whereas if we go back to our current model, it's just Wednesdays and Saturdays for the collection sites. This is that calendar just in a more homogenized format for you to look at. Okay, those are the hours and days of operations for our facilities. So at the top is the transfer station, daily operating hours Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. 5:30 to 2 p.m. we would accept trash up till 1 p.m. Wednesdays is when we have our late afternoon hours. We'd be open all day, 5:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. So on any of these days here, the haulers could get their morning routes done, be finished by 1 o'clock hopefully. On Wednesdays, if they've got some late pickup routes, we could process them right up until 6 o'clock. The public drop-off, we've got Mondays 6 to noon, we've got Wednesdays 1 to 6, Saturdays 7 to noon, okay? Boyceville area collection station, Wednesday 12 to 6, Saturday 7 to 12. Colfax, same thing, 12 to 6, 7 to 12. Connersville, every other Tuesday, 1 to 5, every other Saturday, 8 to 12. Downsville, every other Thursday, 1 to 5, every other Saturday, 8 to 12. Elkmount, Wednesday, 12 to 6, Saturday, 7 to noon. Ridgeland, every other Tuesday, 1 to 5, every other Saturday, 8 to 12. And Rock Creek, every other Thursday, 1 to 5, every other Saturday, 8 to noon. And then at the bottom, Sand Creek, converting, right now we have a Saturday model there for 4 hours, manned by George Keltner. We would create an unmanned site, which means you'd have 24/7 access to the site for the northern communities that utilize the fiber and container boxes there. Okay? Any questions on that and what's on the calendar? Riley?
Why none of the remote sites on Friday?
Well, we wanted to give some days off so that our haulers could service boxes. We wanted to, we thought that we should have at least a concentrated functions during the middle of the week, and then have at least a Monday and a Friday where we've got time in there for the haulers to get to the sites. So.
You're on the Thursday and the Saturday opposite weeks?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, and the question will come up, what if one day is on a holiday? The way the model works is that we just skip the holiday and we would pick it up again the next normal business day. So there would be I'm sure there'd be a couple unfortunate events where one of your site days is on a holiday, you wouldn't get there until the following week. So. Any other questions on, yeah?
Why not 9 to 2 instead of 7 to 12 if you're worried about traffic flow? I think there's more potential for there being a glut between 11 and 12 and pretty sparse at 7.
Yeah, we thought about that, and we can't please anybody with these models no matter how we spin it. What we've seen is that most of the time it seems that people want to get their recycling done early in the morning, especially on Saturdays, because most people want to be out and about doing their thing. They don't want to be showing up at a site, around noon, because that's in the middle of their day and they're already out fishing or hunting or whatever. So the early morning hours seem to be better for most people. And we started to notice that in the midday hours is where we saw the lulls at our sites. Now, there's an exception to every rule. People get off of work at lunchtime, they come to the sites, want to get their garbage done real quick. We recently changed the hours at Downsville to reduced hours, and we had some people call and say, look, the only time I can utilize this site is in the afternoon hours. If you take the afternoon hours away from me, I'm working, I've got kids' sports and stuff in the morning, I can't make that work. So they were one of the people that were the exception that model wasn't going to work for. But Downsville's 6-7 miles from the Dunn County transfer station public drop-off. So, there's at least some ability for them to, if they can't make it to their site that day, they can scoot on down the road. Albeit you got to drive a little bit, but you can get to a site to do your garbage or your recycling. That's kind of the impetus of the model throughout the county, is adding additional days of opportunity in multiple municipalities versus having those, 2 days only. But I agree, there will be people that model will not be perfect for, you know, that are utilizing sites during certain bandwidths of time, and that the new model may not work so well. So we hope that they can utilize a different site. Any other questions on that proposed schedule? Yeah, that's a good point. Steve said the current model doesn't work for everyone either. That's right. We'll never have the perfect model where everybody, unless we were open 24/7 with, you know, robots out there working, but we don't have that ability. So we do the best we can with what we got. We still provide, even under the alternative model, we're still providing a lot of opportunity out there for residents. It is a reduced opportunity, but we're still there. We're still providing all these services to the residents of Dunn County. Okay, I'm going to let Megan take over from here. She has burned her fingers off recycling through these metrics, and she's done a fantastic job. These are some options that we can work in or out of this model to make things possibly more palatable for you, or we've got some suggestions making this work better for us. I'm going to let Megan talk through this. So.
Thanks, Morgan. So this is a really busy spreadsheet, and I do apologize for that. You do have it on your copy as well, so I know this is probably not readable. So the basis of this is we wanted to come up with what would the per capita look like in several of the scenarios that we've been proposing. Also wanted to show if we maintain what we're currently doing now, status quo, where does that take your per capita? Just to kind of help put this in perspective, frame the conversation. So the budget scenarios here are on the left. When we do our budgeting, we have a recycling budget and a solid waste budget, which is why those are balanced there. Basically what I did to come up with these numbers, I took our submitted budget and did some modifications. As you see on the bottom of your sheet here, there are some things we changed from our submitted budget that was approved by the county board. Mostly things like clean sweep. When we submitted our budget, we had not yet even had our clean sweep. We didn't know that would be such a large turnout and a large expense. So I have taken those things into account with this new model, so it's a more realistic picture of what we know now of what our expenses could be. Other things, we are going over an RFP on hauling. We know that hauling will likely increase, entering in a new five-year contract for that by the end of this year. So factoring some projected increases there to try to have the most realistic picture. Obviously, with any budget, it's a forecast. We're doing our best to do it, but certainly the possibilities for unexpected things will come up, or if the hauling comes in higher than anticipated, etc. So we have status quo here as one option, and then the model that the Solid Waste Board motioned and approved at our last meeting was the one that we've shown here, where the smaller sites have the 1 day a week, and the larger sites have 2 days a week, and the public drop-off has 3 days a week. One of the questions brought forward by some board members wanting to know the difference in staffing levels at 2 of our larger sites. So in that model that was approved, there was an approval for 3 attendants at our Elk Mountain site, and that model had 2 attendants at Boyceville and Colfax. One of the questions raised by some board members would be, what would that look like if we had 3 attendants at Colfax and Boyceville, as they process similar amounts of material through those sites as well.
And the reason we put 3 attendants on there versus 2 is those of you who have been to our larger sites in particular know that those can be very, very busy sites, and oftentimes our attendants are so slammed with traffic that they have trouble being as effective as they want to be during those times. I've got some PDO folks here that work at the transportation public drop-off, same dynamic there. There are days when they just cannot possibly keep up with the level of traffic, and people get frustrated. So at our largest sites, at least, if we have 3 attendants, we're able to service you a lot more effectively, plus maintain compliance and everything else, make sure we're not getting hazardous waste in the compactors, making sure things are going where they're going. So we recommend that model all the time to our board. Look, our largest sites have to have 3 attendants, otherwise we're just missing too much. And the public drop-off has to have 4, otherwise the bins load up with paint and things. There's a very interesting dynamic in Dunn County. Like I said, 99% of our citizenship are great. They recycle perfectly, they're honest, they pay for their fees, but there is that 1% of folks that try to find a way around it. And so last weekend at the public drop-off, we had a couple people out with illness, so we had 2 people out front. Well, we received about 300 pounds of hazardous waste on one day that was illegally dumped because we couldn't catch it. It was actually dropped off by our metals area. And it was, we had 5-gallon pails of asphalt roofing cement, brand new in the can. That's an expense that we have to pay for now in our, in next year's clean sweep that we haven't really budgeted for. So we like to have 3 people, if possible, at our collection sites. The model that you see in front of you tonight does not include that. It includes 3 at the Elk Mountain site, but it's only 2 at the Boyceville and the Colfax site. We would have to ask you for some help in way of additional per capita to get our attendantship up at those larger sites to where we feel it's beneficial to you.
So some other notes about this, one of the other options we wanted to work through is what does this look like if we host 1 clean sweep per year? The 2-day event, one in Colfax, one in Menominee. Or what does that look like if we offer a spring and fall, give additional opportunities for clean sweep and hazardous waste disposal, what that would look like financially and how that would impact the per capita. So another note, the hazardous waste expenses do come out of our solid waste portion of the budget. They're integrated in there. So this column here, the add to fund balance from our budget, that would be if our revenues exceed our expenditures in a given budget. There are a few scenarios in our recycling budget that we do have a little bit of an excess projected, and that would go into our fund balance from these scenarios. Amounts from the fund balance to balance the budget is basically if there is expenditures that exceed revenues, that's where we would be at. That would be money that we would need to generate through either per capita, user fees, a referendum levy for tax levy, etc. We also wanted to start budgeting a contingency fund, kind of like the fund balance, but you know, when you build a large construction project, you put a contingency fund in. We would like to, we just threw a number of $100,000 out there. That could help save us from, you know, poor markets if our sale of recyclables go down. Our scrap metal, we were getting $10 a ton for it. We would have to start paying in for scrap metal. That was a spot that we could do that. Any overtime, in Portage County, they are currently paying in $20 a ton on their scrap metal.
I have a question. You keep saying $10 a ton for your scrap metal. What's figured into that to give me that figure, that you're giving us that figure?
As far as so we have 30-yard dumpsters at the transfer station. All of our, that's the rebate we get after accounting for the transportation and hauling of that material by our vendor.
It's called freight on board pricing. So everything that we sell to industry, including scrap metal, includes the transportation costs worked into it. And because we have a large network of sites throughout Dunn County, and all of our scrap metal is transported from Dunn County back to Eau Claire County, there's a lot of diesel and a lot of energy in that.
So, I called last week because we're cleaning up our farm. I was told by an Eau Claire firm, $200 for the dumpster, $50 a ton. Your numbers don't compute. Now, I didn't hire them because I wasn't sure that I could get 5 ton in there of scrap from the farm to make it pay, so I didn't have to pay out of my pocket. So I hauled it to Downsville. Last week it was $50 a ton, under a ton, $60 over a ton. This week it's $60 a ton and $70 a ton over a ton. So are we shopping around? Are we just going with toys and paying them?
You brought it to them, right?
I understand that, but still at $200 for transportation, how many ton can you get in that trailer?
In a 30-yard container, you could get 30 ton in there potentially.
Okay, so your numbers don't compute. At $50 a ton, it costs you $200. It takes 4 of them tons to pay for the trucking.
So in the steel industry, the scrap steel industry, there's categories in there as well. There's prepared versus unprepared.
I'm talking about mixed. I'm talking about mixed. I understand it.
Okay.
I've been in that kind of business all my life.
Sure, sure.
So your numbers don't compute. Or we're not shopping around getting our best bang for our buck.
We have shopped around. Now steel has come up to 25 a ton for December, so the increase you're talking about is coming up. Right now, today it's $10. It's coming up to 25 for the county. We're not alone here. Pierce County gets an extra $5 per ton only because they have a single dumpster and they have a local scrapyard that's willing to pick it up. There is a limited number of haulers in Dunn County to transport 8 collection sites worth of steel, and at the transfer station when we're open during the week, and particularly when we're open at the public drop-off, we will create 3 30-yard containers of steel on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. That is a lot of service, and there's only so many companies out there that can service that many boxes. And Toys is so far the best one that we have.
It still doesn't make sense. If you get a dumpster for 200 dropped and picked up, as an individual, something ain't computing in my world. I don't know what you guys are.
Well, when you have 3, 6, 9 plus 8 dumpsters and
But it's
all
still
of that
$200 a trip.
transportation back, yeah.
It's still $200 a trip. And 30 ton does not come down to $10 a ton.
Yeah, we do shop around. I don't know what the quality of your steel was either. They may have.
Oh, it was junk. I mean, it was anything from tin. I had wood in it, so I took a hit.
Sure, yeah.
So I know. It just, I don't know. It bugs me that you're saying that when something ain't right. $200 for dumpsters, what I was told. And that's in Menominee. That wasn't like, I was on the other side of.
Who was the hauler? Do you mind mentioning that?
Cooley, or whatever it was. But I called Toys last year and I called Kaningers. They were about the same kind of money.
Yeah, Cooley's
Have we talked to Downsville?
Right. Yeah.
Because I know that Sears in Menominee takes refrigerators and stuff and drop it off. It doesn't cost them anything.
Yes, they do.
And they go to Downsville. So they've worked something out with the company. So if we're paying Toys to get rid of them, maybe we need to be talking to, and I don't know the name of the company. They're out of Prescott. But
are you confident that the refrigerant gases are being removed by a certified agency in Down?
He's huge.
That would be the question I would.
He's huge.
I know who you're talking. I know who you're talking about. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the comment.
Yeah.
So back to our scenarios here, the contingency fund, we threw out $100,000. These are numbers that are up for debate. Certainly would like input on these numbers as well. We want to start budgeting, have a goal of budgeting to actually add to our fund balance instead of continually robbing it. So you're showing $25,000 for each budget, gives you an annual input of $50,000 to start building our financial ground a little firmer there. And then the total here in this column is we're going to hold 2 clean sweep collections, a spring section and a fall selection. And then this one is the 1 clean sweep, which is the current model that we're utilizing. If we wanted to move to Belcher County to have 2 clean sweeps for 2020, we would need additional funds before we go.
What's in the clean sweep? What's the materials?
So it's a hazardous waste collection. So oil and latex paints, stains, solvents, pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, compressed gas cylinders, pressurized paints, PCB ballast. What else? Any sort of chemical you have in your garage, your workshop.
Can you normally
farm
bring
chemicals.
Can you normally bring that stuff in?
No, we are not licensed to store that and collect that regularly.
During the year.
So we hire a vendor out of Eau Claire currently, who comes in, provides the staff, brings all of the containers that you need to ship it. They organize the shipping for it and all the manifesting and bills of lading, etc. So the material is collected and processed that day and shipped out.
So Eau Claire does it?
It's a private company in Eau Claire.
Just wondering if they were open, in case you want to give her some stuff before the clean sweep.
Yeah.
Like he's cleaning up his farm and all.
We do have an agreement with them.
Yeah, we do have an agreement with them. You just need to make an appointment with them, and it usually has to have some sort of necessity or immediate need, because they are a TSDF facility, which means they have to account for every single load and manifest every single load that comes in. So they don't want every Johnny homeowner coming with 2 little bags of things 100 times, a day. But, certainly if you have an immediate need, you're moving, selling your home, cleaning out an estate, et cetera, they could certainly work with you.
Okay, I thought maybe hazardous was television, not because the
No,
that was
so
hazardous
It's a different
material.
type of
hazardous material, but it's not regulated as hazardous.
Solid and liquid chemicals primarily. And we do receive a lot of that unintentionally. People that place those things in roll-off dumpsters and things that are hauled to the transfer station, when it's tipped and we see that, it's our responsibility to grab that and set it aside and hold that for our next clean sweep, because we can't send that material to the landfill. That material is prohibited from the landfill.
Guys?
Another thing, believe me, I fully recognize that having a single clean sweep event in 1 year is not enough, right? If you move into a house and in the basement you look down, there's 30 cans of latex paint, you don't want to sit on that for 9 months until the next clean sweep. I understand that. So one of the things that I will do my best to provide to you, if we get to the point where we can build a new facility at the Dunn County Transfer Station, I'll do my best to provide a year-round hazardous waste collection facility there for all of the residents of Dunn County. I think that is critically important from a stewardship perspective, and just from a convenience perspective for all of you to get rid of your toxic stuff that you don't want laying around your house. And when people don't have an avenue to get rid of things properly, they tend to find the wrong avenues to get rid of stuff. If someone's moving to Chicago tomorrow and they've got all this stuff in their house, what are they going to do with it? So we need to provide solutions for them. And that reciprocity with Polk and St. Croix helps. The additional drop-off agreement that we have, the company's called WRR Environmental in Eau Claire. That's who we utilize for that. But there's multiple hazardous waste vendors throughout the state. But that's the one that we utilize. So Dunn County residents can take materials to they would have to deliver them to WRR Environmental in Eau Claire, but that can be done outside of our normal clean sweep dates in any given annual time.
So are the clean sweeps the same? Are the clean sweeps the same, meaning paint and rigid materials? Are they identical both in the spring and the fall?
We currently only have a fall collection. What we would aim and our goal is to go to a spring and fall collection in future years.
With identical types of pickup, or do
Yep.
like paints in one and do more rigid in the other?
So it would be the same materials collected, it would be the same opportunities to do that, just spread out throughout the year. Also, I'd anticipate that we potentially offer it in different communities. Certainly would have a day in Menominee probably at our transfer station both times. We may be able to change from Colfax to Boyceville or Elk Mound, or spread around the county a little bit more to make it more convenient for folks that live in different portions of the county.
And the best part about that is we propose eliminating fees at the events. The fees are what takes time to process your materials, and of course it eats into your pocketbook. So if we could get additional support through a dedicated hazardous waste clean sweep per capita, we could deal with all of those fees so that we don't have to pay that later on by taking it out of our fund balance to just maintain our operations. So, but in the future, I fully intend to pursue a year-round hazardous waste collection in the county. I think that's very, very important. And there are some counties, none in the immediate proximity to us, but we've been to year-round hazardous waste facilities in Minnesota for one. They're very, very highly utilized and very well thought out facilities and appreciated facilities by residents. Imagine being able to have a site that's open twice a week where you can bring all the paint and bleach and unused fertilizer. That's a huge, huge convenience, and it's a great boon to environmental stewardship. Make sure that stuff's disposed of properly.
So looking at what the impact of per capita is, which is really the bottom line for many of our municipalities. So these are increases from our adopted 2020 per capita. The adopted values are here. These were set by the Solid Waste Board in September of this year and mailed out to the municipalities so they could build their town budgets. For the solid waste program, it's $12 a person. For our towns and villages in recycling, it's $11. Many of our towns and villages do participate in both the solid waste and recycling program, so that would go to $23 per person. And there's a special rate for the city of Menominee, which is currently at $6 a person, and they're only in the recycling program. Oftentimes, depending on how your municipalities handle this per capita in a variety of ways. Some build it totally into their town budget. Residents don't see a certain amount billed to them. Others bill back or their residents in a variety of ways to calculate that. So a lot of times we refer to like our household numbers, which what we use is an average of 2.5 people per household. It's not an exact science, but it gets you in the ballpark of what municipalities may be charging if they bill you back. So for our different scenarios, for status quo, if we kept things all the same as we're doing, we don't reduce site hours, we don't reduce staff, we don't reduce any of the materials we collect, you would look at your per capita average on household would be $90.26 if you participate in both recycling and solid waste. Question.
Is that back to normal Townsville hours?
That is back to what we're currently doing. So it would be the
We can add a couple
Wednesday.
pennies to it to get you back to where you want to go.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it would be the 1 to 5 on Wednesdays and 8 to noon on Saturdays.
Yeah, I felt the brunt of that, like right in my own house, I couldn't run away.
The important part to note about that, so that $90.26 annual per capita. Let's just compare apples to apples. So, I'm sorry, household, yeah. So let's compare apples to apples. If you went to, let's say you're considering, you know what, I'm going to get privatized services to do the same thing. I'm going to have privatized service for my trash and privatized service for recycling, whether it be commingled or source separated. What are you going to pay to do that? We called around and asked all of the haulers that service in Dunn County and got some numbers. It is quite staggering the difference in what you would pay for privatized services, even at this rate, the rate that Megan just talked about, which is not the model we're proposing. That's if we make no changes to our program whatsoever. So you would pay $90.26 per household every year. You'd have 100% access to our solid waste recycling program, electronics disposal, tire recycling, compressed gas cylinders, clean sweep events, your hazardous waste disposal, all of the other access to our programs that you'll get nowhere else. There won't be a single entity stepping up in Dunn County to handle hazardous waste, to handle electronics, to handle compressed gas cylinders. There just aren't many people around that are set up to process and move those materials responsibly. So that's something that everybody would have to consider, along with if anybody decides that, you know what, we want to take a stab at becoming our own responsible unit in our community, providing these services for our residents at our own sites. There's a tremendous amount of responsibility. There's the annual reporting. There's the, reaching out for the state recycling grant, all of the administrative minutia that goes along with that, all of the hauling and processing. Where are you going to go with it? How are you going to process it for sale? All of those things need to be considered. Plus, that would only be for your mandated recycling. Mandated recycling is paper, cardboard, glass, number 1, PET bottles and jars, number 2, HDPE bottles and jugs, steel cans and aluminum cans. And that's all you're going to get at the curbside. Everything else that you recycle with us now, all of the tires, the electronics, the hazardous waste, the sardine cans, all the unique stuff, the mixed rigid plastics that's been a huge component of our program now for a couple of years, all of that you'd have no avenue for to get rid of whatsoever. Okay, so that's something to consider as you look at that number. Now, I pay, for instance, in Eau Claire, I pay about $65 a quarter for curbside trash and recycling. That's a quarter. Multiply that times 4, gives you my annual per capita, if you will, for solid waste and recycling, with no opportunity for any of the items I just mentioned. So keep that into perspective. Yeah.
Under the $90.26, just clarify, there'll still be a fee for tires.
Yes, good point. So for any of the items that cost the county significant revenue to recycle, again, we're charged by our downstream recyclers as well to dispose of things. Some of the highest ones that we do, obviously the hazardous waste one is the largest, but right behind that is electronics for reasons I mentioned earlier. Tire recycling is very, very expensive because you think about how resilient a tire is to destruction, right? They're designed to last really, really long. The company that we use for tire recycling is called Liberty Tire Recycling, and they have machinery and equipment, gargantuan machinery that tears those tires apart, pulls the metal out of there and creates a product called crumb rubber, which is used as an artificial turf replacement and that sort of thing. And they make other various products as well. But the energy and the infrastructure that goes into being able to process that increases the cost of the recycling. Same with electronics. All of our electronics go to a company called Dynamic Life Cycle Solutions in Onalaska, Wisconsin. They run an amazing process, and they're 100% zero landfill. What that means is that every single component of the electronics that we send them under our certified Wisconsin e-cycle certification is processed, recycled, and or if it's not truly recyclable, gets diverted to a waste-to-energy facility. What waste-to-energy is its conversion through incineration from a product into energy, right, to make electricity. There's going to be some other new sciences coming online here in the next few years. One of them that I know is coming probably in the next few years is called pyrolysis. Pyrolysis is the molecular cracking of plastics in the absence of oxygen and in a lot of heat to create synthetic diesel fuel. So you're basically melting a plastic, you're pulling out all the petroleum out of there, and you're creating a usable synthetic diesel that can actually be used in trucks. And then you create what's called a biochar, that's what's left of that, and that component is then landfill. So at least you got a little bit more bang for your buck, and you reduced the volume of material that you're actually sending to the landfill. That's what waste to energy is. Dynamics 100% zero landfill. But the cost of recycling electronics, again, because of the hazardous metals that are in there, and the technological nature of taking that stuff apart and harvesting all of the good components in there, the precious metals, the gold, the silver, the palladium, the tantalum, all the metals that are worth money in there, you want to scavenge those out of there before you just, tear the living crap out of that stuff. So it's expensive to recycle electronics. Tires and electronics in particular hit us hard. We have to pass those fees down to our constituents.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, Megan?
Yep.
$90.26 is not this model, it's the current one that we're doing now.
Correct.
Plus two clean
sweeps. Correct. If we did our current model with one clean sweep, it would be the $82.47 for households.
But not this one.
Correct. So, and for reference, the adopted 2020 per capita, and when you go to the household rate, is $57.50 for this year, using a 2.5 person model just for comparison. So the models that you see on your calendar and your sheets today, that model is this 2-attendant model. This is where the per capita would essentially be on a household range. For 2 clean sweeps, that's $75 and change. And then for 1 clean sweep, it'd be in the $67.50 range.
In addition?
That would be annual. So the additional amount you would need is over here on this top spreadsheet. So the model here, 2 attendants for solid waste recycling, depending on 2 clean sweeps, we would need additional $1.21 from the recycling side per person, and an additional $5.94 per person. Or if we did, for solid waste, if we did just 1 clean sweep, it would be 4 cents for recycling and $3.98 for solid waste. Why you may ask why this is different than the actual adopted per capita. Part of it is we've had to increase expenses since we needed to set our per capita rates in September. Things have changed as far as we do our clean sweep now is much more expensive. We are going out for RFP and hauling that we didn't know we were going to be going out for when we adopted it in September. So
just to clarify, then the 7536 or the 7713 is this calendar model.
Yep.
Plus 2 clean sweep.
Correct.
Whereas the 6757 and the 6934 is this calendar.
Yep.
Plus 1 clean sweep.
Right. So
the 9026 is no change in the current model.
Yep, we just.
Yep. So those are basically the guidelines of where per capita may end up going. If you feel, as municipalities, adamant that in 2020 we need to have 2 clean sweeps, then we will need additional funds. if you're to say, hey, let's hold off, let's do one clean sweep, get through 2020, and talk about a conversation, including that in the per capita fees for 2021, that would be something we can do as well.
Is there a reason, Megan, why one clean sweep increased at around $30, but you add a second one and it's only $8?
Partially because the amount of budget for clean sweep went up so much from what we were originally projected. So the difference, I believe, between one clean sweep and two clean sweeps is just under $50,000 in our budget. And some of these increases as well are due to the fact that we're adding in these contingency money and adding in some money for the fund balance.
So you only budgeted $50,000 for one clean sweep when it cost you $65,000 this
So
year.
that's a great point. So the number that Morgan gave, that included the in-kind staff time. So when we do our grant reporting, we also have to include the in-kind staff time. So the hours I work, the hours Morgan worked, the hours all of our county staff work, or our contracted staff work. Those are accounted elsewhere in our budget. So the actual part coming out of the line item for clean sweep was around $49,000. Thank you. Yep.
I'm just trying to figure out, right now, what we're paying is the $23 per capita, right?
For 2020, yeah.
For 2020. If you went to the proposed per capita status quo, it would jump to 35, 36.
That would be to cover all of our expenses, how we're currently
That's if
operating.
you stayed with what we have.
What?
That would cover the cost for what we have.
What we have currently, yes.
36, and then if you went to 2, you're looking at 29 and 30. Right?
What do you add, Mark?
That's what the calendar
Oh,
was.
I'm just going across.
Right. The 29 and 30 is with this plan.
I just, in our town, we put it in our budget, so I'm
Yeah.
looking at budget.
Yeah, so, and that's a good thing. Several municipalities do bill it back to the residents. So some residents are more familiar with this household total. I personally live in the town of Menominee. With my property tax, I get a bill where I need to write an additional check for a certain amount of money. So some people are used to that model and are familiar with how that number looks, which is why we included the household number as well.
Can I just a clarification, maybe I'm losing track here a little bit, but so the 2020 per capita that's been adopted in the 2020 budget, that's there. That's an increase, but that's going to stay, right?
Under the new model, it would.
Right, under the new model it would. So all these proposed per capita scenarios are if everybody wants to pay more money, or you're kind of teasing us and saying that's what's going to be in 2021. Is that another way to say it?
Yes, so it would be a potential ballpark idea of what services might look like, passing on these true costs for 2021.
But you still don't have a hauler. That RFP contract is going to be a big
Yes.
unknown.
It is a big unknown. I did modify our budget and increase it by a fairly substantial amount, trying to be conservative. I'd rather overestimate what our hauling costs might be and hope that it comes in under that and there's some savings there.
Because some of us are going through, we're locking in our 2020 budget. And
Yes,
some townships
absolutely.
already have. So
Absolutely.
it gets a little nervous, anxious if we've already locked in a budget. And you're, when we think you're saying you're going to increase it, that just.
The timing of this is unfortunate.
But you're not saying you're going to increase the 2020.
No, under the proposed model, the 2020 numbers are set. These are options. If everyone in the room here raises their hand and say, you know, we want this, we can make that modification. You'd have to make it through an amendment to your budgets.
But if they don't want it, then this is pretty much,
Correct. Then
Or
this
you're
is,
cutting into the fund balance another $290,000.
well, we don't have that left to do it. So, and that's the harsh reality here, guys, is we no longer have the fund balance to do it that way, so.
Go ahead, Corey.
Okay, how'd you end up, you went all the way down to zero, from 870.
We're not zero, but we're close. We're about $100,000 in that fund balance, so.
Okay, and it happened in how much time?
In about 3.5 years, so.
We're just learning about it now.
No, we talk about this all the time at the board meetings, but you're right, we should probably have this
little bit more of a specific meeting with regards to this annually, but let me explain why that fund balance has come down. So, as I said, our facilities are approaching 30 years of operation. They're getting really, really hungry on the corrective maintenance scale. When I first got here, all of our compactors were also very, very old and were in end-of-life condition as well. So there's a point where you're spending all this money on corrective maintenance, and you've got to make the call that, look, it's going to be in the county's best interest to invest in new equipment rather than throwing all this money at a machine that consistently breaks down. So we had to replace all of the solid waste compactors, hydraulic compactors at all of the collection sites. That was $250,000. We made a variety of improvements at the transfer station. We had some emergency tipping floor repairs. We actually had another one just 2 weeks ago where the floor was beginning to create a sinkhole. We had to fix that, so we had a lot of unintended improvements that were necessary that chiseled into that fund balance as well. We took the opportunity to use $175,000 of the fund balance to purchase the 20-acre property immediately adjacent to the transfer station for the purpose of eventually having contiguous property to build a new facility on, should we get there eventually. I think that's good planning by the Solid Waste Recycling Management Board and good use of those funds. Yeah.
Now, your contingency, what you're proposing, is that, if you built a $20 million facility, are you going to add that bond cost to it, or are you planning on, or do you think you got enough money in your contingency, or what, you understand what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. If we invest that type of infrastructure in Dunn County, which we need to do ultimately, we will have to pass some of those increases down. The per capita would be coming up, certainly. But we can control that in several ways. If we can approach the county for a levy to get assistance that way, it might lighten some of the burden from per capita. It's still a tax, I get it. The other thing is we could look at flow control in Dunn County. What flow control is it's an ordinance that you put in place that requires all materials in the county, solid waste and recycling, to come through your responsible unit transfer station. In the case it would be us, it would be our transfer station, our new transfer station. People have asked, why don't we implement flow control right now and get all this extra stuff to make money on? We don't have the potential in our tiny building that was built in 1991. We're already at or above capacity. But long term, if we do get down the road where we do make the investment, we do go out and bond for a facility like that, and we have levy support as well, plus the per capita, plus the user fees, and then we implement a flow control ordinance, that really guarantees that we get a lot more material to help support operations through tipping fees and user fees at the new transfer station. And that's not unique to this, to what we're talking about. Many, many counties in the state have done flow control ordinance. They've gone through the same death dance that we're doing. My God, we're hemorrhaging money. We've got all these old facilities. We need to build something new. They get the bonding to build something new. Bam, they slap on a flow control ordinance, and they got a consistent stack of material coming in to help pay for it. That's how flow control works. Yeah.
So I might have missed it in the very beginning, but we've talked a lot about how, due to the decrease in recyclables revenue that's coming in, because we were basically subsidizing everything with the Chinese. What is the trend for the non-recyclable solid waste per household in Dunn County? How has that gone up or gone down, and how is that eating into your guys' numbers?
So that's a great question. There's a huge impetus to create cyclic economies for everything we make, right? That's smart stewardship, smart sustainability. We'll be giving some presentations at UW-Stahl with their student capstone groups in the coming weeks here about that very concept. It's like, why are we still making things that aren't recyclable, right? We're supposed to be the most advanced, the smartest country in the world. We should be doing better, and we can do better. So there are a lot of things that people dispose of that aren't recyclable, but there are a lot of things that Dunn County recycles that's not mandated, right? So I talked about the mandated recycling. One of the biggest perks of our program is you have the opportunity to participate in all of these other non-mandated recycling services. We really lead the way in this county in recycling opportunity, not only for residents, but also for businesses. Businesses can pay a recycling tipping fee of $45 a ton for prepared recycling to bring it to us so that we can help them with their stewardship and, you know, at their facilities and improve their models there and their sustainability. So how much of that do we see in Dunn County? We see a lot. We're still, sustainability in product manufacturing is really still in its infancy. And it is that way because there's one thing that rules that business model, and you know what that is, right? It's cash. So we tend to make things as cheaply as possible, as fast as we can make them, get our profit, and get out. That's the business model this country's operated on. Most countries of the world have operated on for as long as you can remember. So
the follow-up question to that is, a lot of other transfer stations in the country utilize a system where it's not like here where you just pay a set fee and regardless of your actual waste production of your household, you know, because you've got people who do a really good job in their household stewardship, and then you have other folks that, for whatever reason, maybe legitimate or not, can't be bothered with it. So they just produce an inordinate amount of waste for whatever reason. So is there any sort of plan or proposal in place if you do, for example, construct a new transfer station that would allow the community to put some sort of we'll call it a feedback loop into place that would have an incentive to have households better monitor their waste production as a way to decrease their own costs, but at the same time it would much more effectively go to your guys' bottom line as well, because you wouldn't be stuck having so many things all the time that just they don't have a place to go anymore.
Do you want to join my team? I love the idea. I mean, that's the type of thinking that America needs. That's what we need all throughout this country and additionally at the local level to stimulate how can we improve this and make it work better for everybody, at the same time saving costs and making sure that we're recycling as much as we can, tuning into that cyclic economy for things. A lot of people, when I first got to Dunn County as the director 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, I started to put out in all of our literature that please remember that recycling isn't a choice, it's the law. A lot of people still don't understand recycling is not a choice. The Wisconsin Resource Recovery and Recycling Law has been in place for decades. It is mandatory to recycle the mandated recyclables that I spoke about earlier. It's not mandatory to do things like steel and, you know, some of the mixed rigid plastics that we do, or the tin foil that we offer, the sardine can type stuff, we call that deox. Those are not mandated. Those are opportunities for residents, and we have markets for all of those materials so that we can process that up, keep that stuff out of the landfill. Everything that we put in the landfill has a cost per ton associated as well. Who wants to plug something in the ground for tens of thousands of years and pay to do it? I don't. So I've done my best to reach out to every single manufacturer I can try to find to be able to recycle commodities that we can accept from residents and business and keep that stuff out of the landfill. The important part moving forward is just what you stated, that critical type of thinking, how can we make this better on a local level? And we've got a ways to go on there. Now, we do a ton of outreach to residents, and like I said, most Dunn County residents are absolutely awesome at recycling. They come to the sites, they got their material sorted, they're doing a great job, but the attendants in the room, and there's a couple of them in the back there, we have to police people's material as it's coming in, because we will literally see some people just not participating in recycling. And it's the law. Every one of our compactors states on there, recyclables are strictly prohibited by Wisconsin law. And then so we have to have a chat with those people and say, hey, we notice you're not recycling, because every bag that's tossed has a certain song that it sings when it hits the wall in there. I know if there's glass bottles in there, aluminum cans, I know if there's Christmas wire in there. We learn all these little songs about how materials sound, and so then we have those positive discussions with people and say, hey, we notice you're not recycling. It is the law to recycle. It is a requirement of the Dunn County Waste Control Ordinance here. We have our own recycling ordinance here. And that's how we educate people and work with them, you know. And for the most part, most people are very adaptive to that, appreciative that we have that dialogue with them. I'll be honest, some people flip you off. I think, Mike, you've been spit on one time. I mean, there are some people that react violently when you tell them about recycling. And there's just some mentalities out there that don't see what you're seeing, the bigger picture of things. You know, they either don't have the means to recycle efficiently at home, or they just don't want to do it. And those are the people that, it's a few amount of people, but we do deal with those on a pretty frequent level. Yes, Frank?
Is Megan done? Because I got some items I'd like you to address, but is she done with her?
I would like to just circle back and kind of summarize here, kind of back to Randy's concern, which I know is a concern of many of our municipalities in this room. So at this point, we are not asking for additional funds unless you really feel strongly on 2 clean sweeps or that. The board has motioned to move to the 2 attendance model as this model with the reduced site hours, the reduced site days, and some of our smaller sites. Be no mistake, while you feel that these are significant changes and they will impact a lot of people, we will be holding our breath for 2020. These are changes that are, yes, significant. Financially, are we going to be skirting the line? Absolutely, especially if we have unexpected large maintenance concerns. The hope then is to go through the referendum process, go through a comprehensive look of what does the per capita look like. With your input, what do you want our program to look like? What services do you want us to offer? That's the feedback we're looking for, and then that helps us adjust the per capita accordingly. We know what our spending can be, what our expenditures can be, with your support of what programs you would like to see in our county.
Frank, you had some questions.
Okay, I got several things. Have you ever considered moving into private enterprise? I know there's someone said we'd run it for you, and that probably wouldn't work. And I understand you're financially hurting because of recycling and stuff, and not that you don't do a good job. But I'd also like to see you bring in an audit of expenses, to look at your program and see where you can save money. You as staff do a good job, but I'd love to see another company come in and look at and see where your expenses are. I do believe you can cut expenses. I think there's waste here. And then the other thing about your contracted staff. I don't know what you're paying the company that you're paying. I don't know what you're paying them. But have you ever considered being county employees? I mean, you folks are, but as far as county employees.
We have walked through that earlier this year with our board.
But what are you paying the temp agency, and what are you paying your people?
So there is a markup on the...
I want numbers.
So it is, for 2020, a 48% markup. The pay for our attendants depends on their position and the level of responsibility they have. I believe our highest paid, Mark, you can help me out if I say this wrong, our highest paid position is the transfer station manager, who makes around $18 an hour.
And a 52% markup on top of that from staff.
He's not contracted. I'm
No.
talking about...
Mark is our project manager for the contracted staff,
Okay,
so he
your
knows all
company's
this.
charging the county $18 an hour?
No, that's the attendance hourly wage. And then there's an additional, currently 51.65% markup. In 2020, we have negotiated that down to 48% markup.
So it's 48% on top of $18?
On top of 18,
Yeah.
correct.
That's quite high, isn't it?
Yes.
So then the lower, like just a regular attendant, I believe makes just under $13 an hour for like a second or third attendant at our site. So that's kind of the range of their per hour. You add in that markup. We did with the help of our Human Resources Department here at the county. We gave them all the positions we have, the hours they work, the responsibilities of their job. They did their best effort on where those would be placed on our existing county grid, what that number would come up with. If all of our attendants were county staff, it would be an additional, I believe, $165,000 to our budget to have the county staff. Including, the retirement benefits that they would get. Some of them are full-time, so they'd be eligible for the health insurance, medical insurance, etc.
But the county could put in a different wage scale for different jobs.
A better one or a worse one?
Well,
That is the question, because it is almost impossible right now to retain workers if you're on the lower end of that grid. We're in a 3% unemployment market, which is amazing.
It seems to me though, Morgan, I mean, you're paying your people $13 an hour, and you're giving the company $35 an hour, whatever that figure is. Then then maybe our attendants should be getting through their company $15 an hour, because that's the ideal thing now, is, $15 an hour, you can't say like $10 an hour.
No, it's 13 times 1.48. The markup is 48%
Yes.
on
Yeah,
the wage.
the part that Ed just brought this up as well, that markup does include all of the attendance FICA, their Medicare, Social Security, all of that stuff that the county does not pay.
So the temp agency gives them some fringe benefits?
Correct.
Okay.
And pays, that is part of the markup. Part of that markup is also the services of our project coordinator right now, which the county does not pay for. And Mark is with us 32-ish hours a week, and sometimes more. Yeah. He also spends almost every Saturday at a collection site.
Believe the county employees.
Yeah, the benefit of having a project coordinator is that Mark will work collection sites when he has people call in sick, so that we don't have to at the much higher rate that we would,
Well, I'm not saying he's not doing a good job, I just wanted these figures. I'm not saying, one way or the other.
Absolutely.
I think we need to know that.
Absolutely.
Okay? So, I mean, it's not detrimental to Mark or anybody, but we need to know that. If you're up here giving us numbers, we need to know that, okay? And then the other thing, again, the audit, clean sweep. I certainly, as town chairman, wouldn't want to put additional money to my constituents to have 2 clean sweeps. And if I read this right, it would be additional per capita and stuff.
Correct, yes.
And I believe there's a lot of people who don't use that, okay? And then why should everybody pay for it? Let the people that have all this stuff pay for it. I don't think it's fair to the other 60% of your population that's not using it, okay? You can dry your latex paint, and you can do some of that stuff. And like Morgan did say, though, if I'm moving out of town tomorrow, I got all this basement full of stuff, which we had a whole bunch of stuff dumped in our township recently. We are drying that, other than trying to dispose of it, plus we're charging the guy that dumped it some monies.
Did you catch them?
Yep.
Good for you.
Thanks to Facebook. I put it on there, and I got my man. I got 2 men, it was 19 and 17. But anyway, the clean sweep. The other thing is, I don't quite understand, you're talking a referendum, so then would that be taxed to all, even the non-participating units?
It'd be property tax. So it would go to all Dunn County residents. I know the next question is, well then, does the town of Hay River automatically have programship with us? The answer is no. They would still have to subscribe through the per capita on top of the levy.
So that might be hard to sell.
It might be, yep.
But that would be voted on by the county.
It would be.
Correct.
It would be on the 2020 ballot in November. So residents would have the choice to vote on it.
That's all I got.
Okay, thank you.
Frank, Hay River household solid waste is $75 this year.
Well, I'm not saying we're ridiculously cheap or ridiculously high. I understand the financial part.
I can repeat
The
that.
idea is to make sure you need that through an audit and take a close look at your budget. You got a lot of numbers up here, and then you say, well, okay, but that doesn't count this here, or this doesn't count this here. I really think you need more black and white in your budget to sell to people.
Mike? I was just looking, the county obviously adopted the 2 attendants. I was just, there is a very big difference between the 2 and the 3.
Correct. There's a very minimal difference. For what I would say is a pretty large gain in service by having.
That's $30 and 15 cents.
Yeah, and it's less than $2 a household roughly to have those 2 extra attendants at those sites.
Well, I thought maybe, I don't have any idea, but if somebody here has some comments on whether the 2 or the 3 are more better, you know what I mean?
As staff, we recommend the 3-person model. There's a lot of benefits that go along with that. Better serviceability for residents, better compliance at our sites. It's for staffing, it's a lot better. If someone calls in sick and we're strapped, working other sites, you could run it with 2 for a day if you had to, Versus now, if you have 2 people, it's not safe to run a site with 1 person. Compactors, we have, all sorts of things. So we always run at least 2 at a site for safety reasons, number 1. So there are a lot of benefits of moving to 3 attendants.
Megan, is the difference between 2 and 3, the difference between the 85 and the 74,000? Where's the numbers?
So over here, 1 feet, so for solid waste recycling here, the additional needed, 102, versus here, you're at 100 and, yeah, so I believe the difference to add 2 attendants to Boyceville and Colfax is $23,000, increase in staffing expenditures.
Are you still taking feedback?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so I appreciate everything you guys do too. I mean, I think the city's only playing in the recycling world. I kind of get that. The one fear is, when you started the presentation, you talked about the recycling crisis. I think one fear is if in a just an umbrella type look at this or stepping back is, if you raise those per capita rates so high, you may have entities jumping out and we're back to where we're putting stuff in the ditch and people are just walking away from the program. The synergy of having one organization work is commendable and it's something to look forward to. So I would submit, maybe smaller increases over time. Looking at that long goal is a lot easier to take on. But if you are going for increases in the recycling world, I would say 3 things come to mind that I would look for. I'd kind of echo a little bit what Frank's saying on the audit, but it would be nice to see the staffing cost over the last 5 years. I mean, how has that gone over time? It would that'd be something I would encourage the board to look at on the sites. What has the staffing looked like? Second thing, on the mandated versus non-mandated, I think that's worth the discussion, because I know you have a passion, and Morgan, you have a passion, to get everything out of solid waste, but are we spending $10 getting this widget and putting it over here and piling it up, and there's no market for it in light of the crisis? And then that widget ends up going into the garbage after we paid all this money to separate it. Just mandated versus non-mandated, just to look at that. I don't expect an answer now, Morgan.
That is
there's a conversation for tonight. There are recommendations we are
that's 2.
going to make to the board.
Okay. The third thing is, an analysis of single stream versus separated in light of, again, the crisis. When Republic came and spoke at your last meeting, I believe they were talking commingled single stream. I believe that's the market they were that a big company, and that's what they sell to municipalities. The world's changed in recycling, and it'd be nice to see an analysis, is that worth the time to look at and the money to go to the single stream? So there's those 3 things: the staffing cost, mandated versus non-mandated, and what are we doing? Have we looked at single stream or not? And maybe the answer is it's not worth it. But those, as we move into this new world and we're looking at new recycling costs, we need to have those answers out there.
Just a response to that last point you made, Randy. I just had a conversation this morning with the board chair and the administrator from Dunn County, and they're looking at the recycling and that part of their operation. They got the incinerator for the solid waste, but for the recycling, they have decided that they want to operate their own recycling program rather than the cost of single stream. It's a short blip, and I don't know what all went into making that decision, but that's one thing that they decided.
Out of Menominee, we looked at single stream last year at this time. And it was a little less money than what Dunn County could take a hold of, but what scared me the most was there was a 5% surcharge on that single stream, that if they didn't make up, they take that single stream and they take it somewhere and they sell it as a product to subsidize their cost. If they come up short on hauling, they're gonna send you a surcharge, another bill to cover their cost. So you're kind of caught either paying it here or paying them. Who do you want to pay? You know, it's a matter of philosophy. You know, do you want to continue as a board or as a county as a whole and recycle some items? Or do we want to privatize it and go a single stream and still pay the same amount?
But I would submit the risk is there when you separate it too, if the markets are so volatile. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pick your poison in some cases. And
We're also having this discussion in the absolute belly of this crisis. So these numbers will get better. They have to. I mean, America is innovating. There will be positive change. These markets will rebound. It's going to take time. And as Megan indicated, we're going to need to hold our breath for a while and hope that everything is rosy throughout the year. Otherwise, we may have to come back and say, hey guys, we've got to, alter this business model that we have.
Morgan, are there, Manny was talking earlier about, are there some things that you're recycling now that you are looking at maybe not recycling?
Bring up the next slide if you would. Yeah, so let's just quickly, let's talk about mandated and non-mandated. Let's get into this discussion. So,
can you tell me what he said the price was for next year?
So, if I may, Steve, town of Cave River, they are an independent RU, so they are not part of the county program, do not pay our per capita. They pay $75 a household per year to use their site that is only it's a single stream dumpster, I believe, and a solid waste dumpster you do on Saturdays. Right, to the town hall.
8 to 4 on Saturdays.
That's not when participating.
No, that does not have anything to do with the county program. That is the town arranging it for themselves and doing their own administrative work for recycling.
Does Dunn County have a per capita right now?
Yes.
What are we paying per capita?
It is, for 2020, it's the $23 per person if you're in a town that participates in both our solid waste and recycling programs. If you use that household metric, multiplied by 2.5, it's $57.50 per year.
Plus the bag fee?
We do not have any bag.
No bag fees. That's unlimited household trash and recycling. And then access to our clean sweep programs and all of the other non-mandated recycling options, some which do have fees, but your opportunity to participate in those items.
Thank you.
Is that on?
Yes.
Yeah, members of the news media are a little confused as to whether these reduced hours have actually been adopted or are they still proposed.
So
we would hate to report them as reduced hours if that's not actually the case.
You'll have that answer at the end of this meeting. So we wanted to give the opportunity for everybody to hear the same message, and if there was enough pushback to maybe, for some of the municipalities to go back to their boards, request to go back to their boards and say, you know what, we would agree to pay more per capita to amp these hours up or amp these services back up. We wanted to give them an opportunity to express that tonight. But the model that we've presented here tonight, if we make no changes to the 2020 per capita, this is what we're rolling with at the end of the year. So we propose that this would kick in January 1. It'll take that long for us to spin everything up and make those changes.
Well, I don't know how many years ago that was, but there were reduced hours at the collection sites.
There were, sure.
So I mean, you're just kind of going back to what it used to be.
The days and hours of operation have changed for, since the program was in place. So, yeah, this is the model that we're proposing moving forward as of January 1 at current per capita level.
So I want you guys to think about something when people are looking at this. We are recyclers, the people you see here. I think that what we need to look at is do some type of an analysis when it comes to Menominee Disposal picking up items, because I will coordinate with what the young lady said over there. I know people that say, I pay a fee of $75 a quarter outside of Menominee or some of the older residents. I don't understand how recycling is working. I'm throwing stuff in the trash and then they can take it and sort it. I think that these folks down at the recycle center spend a tremendous time, and you came back with clean recycling is extremely important. And that is a manual thing that has to be done if we don't have equipment. So I think more of a sell here is to understand who and how and why people aren't recycling. Is it because you have condominiums, you have townhomes, you have a lot of new things? How are they allowing and doing stability for recycling? I know my mom was elder. She said, I can't put ones in a bag anymore, twos in a bag and put it in one thing. They all have to be in separate compartments now. And she's like, forget it, it's going here.
So that's a great question, and Megan has been adopting a lot of that. We get a lot of calls from potentially residents like your relative that may live in a multi-unit facility, and it is the landlord's responsibility to provide recycling services for their tenants. We get a lot of calls from people that say, hey, I live at so-and-so residence, there's no recycling box outside, it's just a dumpster for trash and nobody's recycling. Well, what Megan does then, or I, is we reach out to those people and we go to visit the site and we say, what's going on here, you know, and we make them, we give them informed literature and the responsibilities of meeting the Wisconsin recycling law and the Dunn County Waste Control Ordinance. Most of the time it's because they just don't understand how it works. So we have a lot of good communication with those folks, getting their recycling program to where it needs to go. Now, again, sometimes that has to result in some nasty letters we send out because repeated non-compliance is something that we pay attention to as well. So that's a very, very good point. Not everybody either can recycle properly without some assistance, and for multi-unit residences, you have to have an infrastructure in place for people to utilize that to recycle. If you just have one dumpster, unless it's a commingled dumpster for recycling, you're not going to be able to recycle effectively. It'll all go to trash.
So the second part of that is what is the cost for separation for the gentlemen or the ladies that work at the transfer station, which impacts our cost and man hours and takes them away from doing other things that are more productive? Because you're talking about efficiency, talking about clean stuff. That's what I'm interested in hearing, that they have to spend their time doing things that we may have to think about how we do it up front or work more with Menominee Disposal and help them.
Yeah. Make no mistake, source separated recycling like we do it is labor intensive. Commingle, you have one bin, you throw everything in there, it gets sent to a giant material recovery facility the size of Kmart, and it all gets processed manually. The benefits to commingle are ease of collection, right? If you have a single bin out in front of your house, you don't have to spend any time reading labels and trying to figure out how to sort everything into these different bins. In Dunn County, it's different. We're a source-separated county. We process all of those things independently for sale back to end recyclers and remanufacturers. There's a lot of time and energy in ensuring that we are making a quality product. Now, the con to recycling is that it may be very, very convenient for people, maybe too convenient, because a bunch of stuff ends up in commingle bins that isn't truly recyclable. That's called wish cycling, okay? I'm going to throw my plastic bags in the commingle bin. Well, plastic bags are the bane of any material recovery facility. All those star gears and mechanisms and things that bag travels through gets locked up in the machinery and causes tremendous corrective and emergency management issues for MRFs. So a lot of, and the process is as advanced as the science is in material recovery facilities with all these mass spectroscopy photo eyes and jets and eddy currents and all this fabulous mechanical wonders they have in place. They're still kicking out up to 20-30% trash of the material that's going through the MRF. Not all of that's garbage either. I'll give you an example. The photo eyes in material recovery facilities are designed to blast a beam of light, basically, at a piece of plastic and tell the machine when to kick it off with a jet, right? So number one plastic goes by, it sends that beam at it, it kicks it off into the number one bin. Number two goes by, it kicks it off over there. Number five goes by, and all the colors of the rainbow except black are going to get kicked off where they're supposed to go. The photo eye is confusing the black polypropylene. Like if you buy a frozen spaghetti dinner, it's usually like a black plastic polypropylene tray, number 5. The machine's not smart enough to say that's not a garbage bag. So boom, it kicks it off in the trash, and all that black polypropylene, perfectly recyclable, is going to the landfill. So commingle, very, very easy to participate in. End recycling rates, not so good. A lot of people that have converted, a lot of the state has obviously already converted to commingle. Many of them are regretting it because of the cost, the ever-increasing costs associated with processing commingled materials through a material recovery facility. I've had, 3 increases on my recycling bill since the first of the year because the cost at the MRF keeps going up and up and up, and my hauler just has to continually pass that expense on to their constituents. You're going to see that everywhere where material is being put through a material recovery facility. The costs keep going up, and in that inverse equation, when costs are going up and prices are coming down, that's a losing bargain for us. So,
is there a fine for like repeat offenders? Say you catch somebody about half a dozen times.
Yes.
Is there a large fine, or is it just a minimal $20 that the guy says, I'll just pay it because?
So that's a great question. The Dunn County Waste Control Ordinance allows us to put an infraction out there up to $2,000 a day for non-compliance. Have we ever had to do it? No. What we'll usually do is the attendants work really, really hard because they typically see the same people coming through their sites on a regular basis. The people that live in Connersville come through the Connersville site, and the people in Downsville through the Downsville site. What the attendants will do is they'll watch the behaviors, the recycling behaviors of their public. And when they notice that that bag is full of trash and aluminum cans, they'll say, excuse me, ma'am or sir, we noticed that you've got recycling in your bag. We want to remind you that recycling is mandatory by state law. It's mandatory in Dunn County. We need you to make improvements, and we're here to help you, okay? What can we do to help you get recycling started at home? Like I said, most of the time people are like, I didn't know that particular item was recyclable, and we work with them to help them learn that. But there are a few that just, we've been called every name in the book, and we've been pushed around. Mike could tell you stories all day. He's taken some really bad abuse out there. But those are the people that will start with what I just talked about, and then after that, letters. We'll find out where that person is and, send a letter to them, again reminding them of their requirement under the law to recycle, and our requirement to make sure that they are recycling. It usually stops somewhere in there, right? Because under threat of the potential infraction that they could receive, you typically see a turnaround.
One thing that we want to keep in mind too is to address your issue is that 90% of the people, I think, in Dunn County are very good at source separating, and that's a real asset. We have a recycling specialist that is continuing to work on educating and helping to improve that source separation, which is what you were talking about. So I think that we need to keep in mind that we have a public that is fairly well educated, cooperative, engaged in the recycling process. And let's not forget that that is an asset. It's hard to put a number on, but
How'd you come up with 98%?
I didn't say 98.
Oh, I thought you said 98%
I said
cooperative.
90%.
90%. How did that, how is that arrived
Up
at?
from there. I would, yeah.
It's a guess. Okay.
But I think that by and large, I mean, this is from what their experience is at the sites. People are pretty good about separating.
But again, the people coming to the sites, myself, maybe once or twice a week, I want to be there and I want to do this.
Yeah.
Those are the only people you are actually interacting with.
Well, out in the country, that's the only option we have.
No,
There's surveys you can send out to say, are you a recycler? Can you do recycling? Are you willing to? Is it too hard for you to do recycling? I think there's some other methods to collect information, to ask to how to do $100, because this is what we're looking at potentially individuals. Communication in a community, no matter how well you think they're educated or how well they are in tune, we have a very transit area and population today. And it means doing something like this annually to keep people on track. Even though you're doing 81% after you do your analysis, next year your goal should be 83% or equivalent to that. So I think some very 10-question type things of survey, and not leading them to answer in a positive recycle, but where are you today and how can we help? This is what we're looking at to keep costs and keeping your recycle center going.
That's a great suggestion, yeah. We do some surveys, like I said, we did one during our clean sweep, but that particular one you mentioned, I think has some merit there.
And maybe there's an opportunity during, when there's some voting coming up, people seem to tend to be there, or coordinate with someone that hadn't by the time that rolls around. You haven't done a transit type recycle if you're there voting. Can it appear on the sheets for them to say, hey, would you fill it out now while you're here? You know, any way to induce and get them engaged. Knowledge is powerful, and the more we keep talking to them, the more people are going to understand that.
Absolutely, and I am very proud of the outreach that we do. We have a newsletter that we send out every year called The Resource. We send out, Megan's always working on Facebook to update our site. Our website's very comprehensive as well. We do press releases quite frequently on, things that events we're holding, like clean sweeps and that, changes in the recycling model, et cetera, et cetera. So we do a lot of that, but can you ever have enough of that? No. And on the flip side of that, can you force everybody to read your outreach or understand your outreach? No as well. But you're absolutely right. Surveys are a great way to figure out where somebody's brain is at in any particular process that they're engaged in.
And I think if you put it on the website, I proposed that before, do one on the website, and then somehow get some literature out for people to know in the water bill. Perfect opportunity. You got a survey, here's the link, please go on, you got 30 days or something like that. Just some way to get out of the manual mailing, because so many people now are more, but your elderly people won't be able to do it. So I mean, maybe they want to have, if you don't hear by a certain time, then hit the others that didn't with the mail. It's just an option.
Yep, those are all good suggestions. Thank you for that.
So Morgan, it's getting kind of, what's going on there. Can we talk to the municipalities of what they think of the plan, or you get some kind of consensus?
Yeah, please do. So again, just continuing, we've kind of been engaging in public comment already, but please continue to, Brian, you had a question.
Yeah, my name is Brian Berkeley, and I've worked at the Menominee PDO for almost a year. And most people are pretty good, but it's a constant education. A lot of people don't understand. A lot of people ask for help. So to have the proper amount of attendance out there, plus dealing with electronics, TVs, is very crucial. Especially bad weather, snowstorms, people still come, And now with the darker weather. So a lot of people want to recycle, but they don't understand. And so to have somebody there to educate them, it's a constant education, which is good, that's what I enjoy. And a lot of people really appreciate that. So another question I have is, I think me and Morgan have talked about county funding from our taxes. As far as I understand, we don't receive county funding from our taxes.
We don't receive any general property tax levy funding, right? The money that we receive is a per capita, which is a voluntary tax, if you will, coming from the 26 participating municipalities.
Okay, because I just checked with Arlene Cartwright for Township of Dunn, and I pay $62 per year on my one property and $75 per year on the other property, and that's not coming to the sites. I don't understand that. I want to know where that money's going.
Are you talking about?
Arlene Cartwright, Township of Dunn.
That's what they're levying?
That's what my cost is on my taxes, and it's for solid waste and recycling.
It was $52 on your taxes last year.
What?
When the taxes went out in December last year, you were taxed $52 for solid waste and recycling.
On my one property.
Correct.
Yeah.
If you paid $60 and you paid it late and there was an interest fee.
Right. But the other property, so is that going to our sites?
Yes.
That
All
is.
per capita goes to the,
Okay, all right.
for the town of Dunn.
Which
brings up our public comment from the town of Dunn. I don't know if we're at public comment yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. So I was one of the only board members to vote against this proposed calendar.
Right.
Go ahead.
Anyway, on the calendar, it seems like some of it has stayed very consistent with the major places. You're Monday, Wednesday, Saturdays. And then you're messing around on the outskirts where we're gonna have a consistency problem with folks between Saturdays and Thursdays, that I can see as a, well, the garbage will still get there on Saturday, because it'll be in front of the gate when they leave. And 4 hours on those is a kind of a safety hazard out there at that site. It seems like it's kind of small to get around. And I think we could use more hours during the day or during the night or whatever it is. Now, if there's a light out there.
We do have lights out there.
Yeah.
So what we did was we came up with a small little proposal, and I don't have very many of these, so if you could share, I appreciate it. And what we thought of was the 4 outlying sites that the board wanted to put down to 4 hours. Instead of having them on Wednesdays and Saturdays, where you're having 18 to 20 people on a Saturday, manning all the Saturday dumps, all 9 of them. What we proposed is putting different dumps on different days. So Connorsville would be all on Monday. Downswood would be all on Tuesday. Ridgeland would be all on Thursday. Rock Creek would be on Friday. I don't know if you want one.
And it's a way that you can, seems like you can cut your attendance or your time, and everybody gets a chance.
So instead of 18 to 20 attendance on a Saturday, you would have 11. Now this is with your PDO hours that you have on your calendar. The transfer station didn't change. Those hours are exactly like your calendar. The PDO hours didn't change. They're exactly like your calendar. The one thing that did change would be your 2 big ones, or 3 big ones, Elktown, Boyceville, and Old Fat. One of those would not be able to do a Saturday.
So you're doing the PDO from 7 to 3 on January 4th? 7 to 3 in the afternoon, I see that.
If you look at the bottom, I have it because we were closed January 1st.
Oh, okay.
Don't have
I
to
see
do
it in
that.
yellow. I'm
All of
sorry.
this is just a proposal. It is because January 1st was closed, I figured they'd need extra hours on the Saturdays.
And it seems to be, when after a holiday, you get, especially after Christmas, it's, or Thanksgiving.
In reality, it's the same hours.
Yeah.
They're just added together.
And it's good.
And after talking to the town of Dunn residents, well, the ones that responded, they are willing to pay extra for this.
Yep.
This is what I heard as a representative from that area. I got multiple calls, and I normally don't get calls on anything. And basically, I got calls out of the blue, and I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? So people are riled up. But essentially, all that they really wanted was service, access to do the recycling, and service was the important category at this particular point. So I think the idea of 3 attendants, if this is something that's going to work out, so that people can get processed through this collection center in a relatively quick time. Now, granted, this may interrupt some of the visiting that goes on at our collecting sites, because it is a social spot. Like it or not, it's going to happen. This is where people find out what the hell's going on in the townships, you know? But at the same time, I think what people are also told me is that they realize that the deal we're getting from the county is a good deal.
It is.
And they're willing to pay for a little bit more, but I think if they're going to pay a little more, they want a little service too.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's my spiel.
And that was one of the big things, is by cutting Downsville or Connorsville or any of those smaller sites down to 4 hours, they didn't want to raise in per capita. I mean, if you want to keep it open where they can access it, and the hours we have on here access the 9 to 5 people and the early morning people and everybody, then they're willing to pay more for that service. And as far as clean sweep, I think it's a wonderful thing. I think it's something we should need in the future. I'm not sure 2020 is the future. Out of the 45,000 in Dunn County, 401 used it. That's less than 1%.
So
I don't know if that's worth it.
on that, we could kick the can down the road a little bit on that, just in 1 year maybe, just to get by. But
You say not have it in a year?
yeah, just skip
Not
a
have
year.
it for 1 year.
What was the date we just had that?
September 18th and 19th.
This year?
September, yes.
And could you not have the business places and the farmers? Could they not work with Eau Claire? Because they're gonna be the larger,
The business is a fee-for-service event, so the county does not pay or subsidize any of the disposal coming from a business. They have to qualify as a very small quantity generator, and they pay for everything that they bring in.
right, I understand that, but could they not work with the Eau Claire site?
Oh.
To, instead of
Absolutely.
worrying about getting, otherwise if they got years of chemicals sitting around, they don't want that either.
And part of it is with our grant. The JACAT grant is broken up into an A grant and for farms and for households. So should we not offer a farm collection, we would not receive a portion of that grant. So our grant would go down as well, but it's an option.
What percentage? You know off the top of your head?
The household grant was $10,000 and the A grant was $5,500 in 2019. We were able to take our numbers to 2020.
And it's a reduced cost for them as well for participating, but only very small quantity generators qualify.
I just have two things quick. I recommend on Monday, the PDO that you've got, because right now it's a 7 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But to accommodate working people, I would move it from 7 to 1. That gives people still time before they have at 8 o'clock. And then 1 o'clock, when the people are taking lunch from 12 to 1 and want to come and drop it off, they have an opportunity. Still the same hours, but just move it back by 1. And the other thing is on the budget, when you guys were talking, back in 2012, the state did 32 million across the board, and then jumped back down to like 18,000. But when I saw what you guys put up there, we only still got around 16,000. We never got an incremental.
Those are two separate grants. So the $15,000 grant is from JACAT for clean sweep. The recycling grant is in the 150s now, but it used to be up in the 200,000.
Plus.
So Morgan, going back, the town of Dunn residents that we just talked to, there's quite a few of them actually that responded.
Right there.
They were willing to pay, instead of having a 4-hour dump, they wanted an 8-hour dump. I think on my sheet I have it as 6 hours, but they really wanted an 8-hour. And 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. They were willing to pay up to $90 for that, or more.
And I completely understand that, and that is where I'd like to see the county go overall. I would love to see municipalities opt in to maintain, better services to accommodate our residents, because people do utilize these sites. The sites do get hammered. Now, of course, there's some days you visit a site, it's dead out there. But we can't staff a site for the lowest or smallest throughput. We have to staff a site for the highest throughput. So I'm very appreciative of hearing that your residents have come to you and said, you know what, this is valuable enough to us that we would see that increase in per capita to get us there.
And I will tell you the 4-hour thing, they want to pull out.
What I like about this new scheduling is it's the same day every day for each site. Otherwise, do I go Saturday or school Saturdays on Tuesday? This way it's a lot more consistent.
Sally, is this the same number of total hours, or is it more hours?
It is.
Than what
It's the same as what we have today. It is not.
Same as current model. Same as today's, not what's on the calendar.
Not this calendar. The 4-hour calendar is a no-go. I mean, it's just
definitely
simply,
not.
we'll pull out and get a different service.
My question.
And that's one reason I voted against it at the last board meeting.
Morgan, if you went into that $90 that Sally's talking, would you be able to put more into contingency?
Yeah, we would kind of be utilizing it through the increased operations. So, we would want to increase that contingency fund somehow.
So there would be more money going.
Well, it would, yeah, exactly. So the operations, obviously, with more hours, more sites open at the same time, that per capita is going to help support that.
There's another question I got. I think you probably got 3 commercial haulers that coming into your section. More. What if they pull out? What happens?
Yeah, every resident, every business, every hauler has the opportunity to go where they want to do business.
No, but I'm talking about the haulers now.
Yep.
You got 3 that
Okay.
I'm aware of that's hauling in your commercial. What if they decide to go to 7 Mile? How's that going to affect your budget?
It would affect us very poorly, absolutely. Yeah, again, when we talk about this model and where we're at today, we're on that thin red line. This is 100% transparent. That line wiggles downward this way, we're out. As much as we want to be here, by default, we're going to be out. That's why we've had to propose this alternative model. Now, if we can figure something out where municipalities are willing to increase to maintain our level of services, hey, that's music to my ears. I want to provide more services for everybody. I love this program. I love your participation in this program. It hurts me to have to come in here and propose, hey, we're shutting down these sites on days that we were previously open and we're cutting your hours. That sucks for everybody. So I am very, very happy to hear that. The only problem with this is that we can't, and we thought about this before the meeting, we can't implement a separate business model at different municipalities. Basically, everybody's got to step up if we're going to move towards maintaining services where they're at. And that may be more difficult for some municipalities than others. And you may have to go back to your constituents and, after tonight and talk to your boards and talk to your residents and say, hey, what do you think about this?
You don't have time to talk to your residents. Not at this time of the
Right, it's a really bad time of year to make these
decisions.
decisions
Have to be done.
Yeah.
Or are done already.
Yeah.
And I'm not prepared to ask for more votes.
I mean, I don't think you're sharing the burden very evenly. If you're dropping in Colfax, maybe there's extra inconvenience if there's one person cut back. If you're dropping in Ridgeland or Rock Creek or somewhere else, you've lost half of your service, if not more.
Those are great points. That's what we're forced to do under the new business model and the financial condition that we're in. We just can't provide the same amount of hours and services at the same rates. We just can't do it. We'll flush right out of business.
I may add, some of the background of coming up with this model was trying to still have every municipality have some form of Saturday hours for the people who do work during the week, where weekday drop-off is not. That was the main goal of this model, presented that every municipality could still have some sort of semblance of Saturday hours. Because I'm not sure which municipality is going to jump up and say, I'm fine not having any Saturday hours ever for disposal. I don't know.
So far, ours was. I mean, you know how it is when you send out a survey. You don't get a whole lot back.
No.
But the problem with this model that I see with every Saturday is you need 18 to 20 attendants. And a lot of them are only working 4 hours a week. And in this economy, I can't see you finding the help.
Well, we would combine our attendance into teams. So, like the gentlemen that work in Boyceville, for instance, I've already talked to them. They would volunteer to run a site on a Tuesday, run a site on a Thursday, and then go back to their site and run it on a Saturday. That's how we build teams. We take our absolute best attendance, we offer them more hours, right? And we can reduce the overall staff by condensing just our best attendants out there who want additional hours. And they run multiple sites.
But you still need the 18 to 20 for a Saturday.
Yep.
You don't need that many during the week.
Right.
So you're still.
Everybody wants the Saturday. That's the issue. Most people want that Saturday. Because if you are too busy during the week, and we all lead very, very busy lives, Saturday is very convenient. If you're not going fishing or hunting or vacationing or whatever. And it's hard to please everybody in any of these models. So, yeah, I hear you.
How about Sunday?
That one might be even trickier to implement. I I'm not sure.
How about summer hours where it's later when it's later out, and then you can remove Saturdays? I mean, the staff deserves to have Saturday or weekends off too if they need to.
Willing to pay $90 per household.
No, please.
But, how do you collect that money now that you've already sent out another bill?
Once the rec bills go to taxes in December.
You do an amended budget, right? Yeah. And that's what really would have to happen here for everybody. If everybody said, look, we've talked to our residents, we've talked to our boards, we've talked to our constituents, we're willing to pay extra to get, an alternative model of this, you would have to amend the budgets that you already have in place. And I see heads shaking. That's tough to do at this late in the game. The timing of this sucks. We understand.
Well, I'll speak for Tom Menominee. We will not amend our budget. We'll stick with this, but I know you're hurting for money, but I also would like to see an audit of your program.
How many outlying areas, towns have garbage service? Menominee disposal or whoever, picking up at their house, at their residence. Like Red Cedar. We have a lot of.
We do too. We have a lot
$6 to be done.
So those people are already willing to, they've chosen to do that. They've
Right.
chosen to pay that price.
Over and above.
Over and above. And we had questions raising ours up, and I can't imagine that they wouldn't complain about jumping it to 90. We'd have some very unhappy people, very, very unhappy people.
Is that an additional 90 on top of what we've already put out there, or is that a total?
Bringing it up to.
Up
No,
to?
but there are some people that pay the per capita for the towns, and then in addition, they subscribe to a disposal service.
Right.
And pay them another $200.
So in Sherman, we divide it out by the people, and what we do is we send them a separate bill, so it's just divided out by the number of residents, and everybody gets the same flat rate. So we jumped ours, that's what we did with ours. So that's why I'm saying, if we did, for example, we're using that, we did 75, and you go up to 90, we'd have to amend our budget to $15 per.
Correct.
Okay.
And that is an issue. I mean, and we get calls about that too. Why am I paying per capita for a program I don't utilize?
Right.
I want my private at my curb. I don't want to have to drive all over the county to these sites to do my garbage and recycling. I want that convenience. Why am I forced to pay the per capita? That is, I understand that.
It is legitimate.
It absolutely.
When they're already paying for a garbage disposal because they want someone to come, they're elder, they don't want to, they can't physically go and do things.
The same conversation would come up if we did, just being realistic here, if we did a levy referendum and it was approved, the town of Hay River would not automatically become a participating municipality. They would still have to pay the per capita on top of the increase in property tax to become a part of our program. That's going to be a hairy discussion if we get that far.
And I will speak up, I'm not in favor of doing a levy. I'd like to rather keep it the way it is. It allows the towns to do those pieces, but that's our choice, or that's but when we look at the wealth of the richness of Dunn County compared to 72 counties in the state, we're at a lower end, a much lower end. And we want to make sure that people still are able to use things and do things and bring other wealth to the area or spend it on fiber or whatever we need to on these things. And so it's the reality of it.
Did I miss something? Did we talk about non-mandated recycling?
We got a little bit steamrolled on that, so we can go back to that for a minute if you'd like to hear about that.
Thanks. Yes.
Okay. So, mandated recycling by the state. The state requires us, because we're a responsible unit for your municipalities, to recycle certain things. And those are right there. Paper, cardboard, glass, number 1, PET plastic, number 2, HDPE plastic, those are milk jugs, laundry detergent bottles, PET plastic, there's soda bottles, Coke bottles, that sort of thing, water bottles. Steel cans and aluminum cans. We are 100% mandated to recycle those items, but We recycle, obviously, those of you in this room know we recycle a hell of a lot more, right? So the next list is the non-mandated recycling we do. That includes trash, not that we're recycling trash, but the commodity, the trash commodity that we get so much of in this county that you're bringing to us in these bags is not mandated. We don't have to provide that service. You pay for that service in the program through the solid waste per capita, and it's a great thing. We provide that service for your residents. No limit to household trash dropped off at our sites. We don't have any per bag charges. So that's a really good thing. Yard waste. We have yard waste services at our Boyceville, Colfax, and Elk Mound facilities. That service is included at no charge with your solid waste permit. Electronics. Imagine if residents had nowhere to go in Dunn County with their scrap electronics. That stuff would be in the ditches 3 feet thick, right? We have a really good electronics program. Tires, same thing. Batteries, car batteries, rechargeable batteries, alkaline batteries. We offer all of that for free right now for batteries. Ink and toner cartridges also free. We actually donate all of our ink and toner cartridges to humane associations who have a rebate program worked out with cartridge remanufacturers, so it's a really good thing. All of the cartridges that we pull from the printers and the copiers that you bring to us, we donate those to humane societies for their programs, to help their buddies out there. Imagine if we didn't have hazardous waste clean sweep. We just talked about this, right? That's an option. It's not a mandated service. I would argue that hazardous waste, proper hazardous waste management is extremely critical in any county. Skipping a year of clean sweep, in my opinion, is not a positive solution for the county. We see so much hazardous and non-regulated solids and liquids coming into the transfer station all the time because people don't have an opportunity to get to a clean sweep when it happens, or they're moving out of a house and they got to get rid of something, and there's no other opportunity, so it ends up getting black bagged, or it ends up getting into our compactors or on our tipping floor by some other means, and that's a big problem in the waste industry. It causes potential issues for exposure for our workers, it's an environmental hazard, and it's a compliance issue. So having a clean sweep is very, very beneficial, but not mandated. Lamps and ballasts. When we talk about lamps, fluorescent lamps, light bulbs of every kind, high intensity discharge, compact fluorescence, mercury vapor, all that stuff. And ballast, the igniter, black igniter ballast in these fluorescent fixtures and things like that. PCB ballast, polychlorinated biphenyl ballast, the ones that were manufactured before '78, which contained the carcinogen PCB. That's all stuff that we accept. Scrap metals. Scrap metal's not mandated, but when you think about that, who's not going to do scrap metal, right? Makes total sense. Scrap metal is a highly refined material that once you melt it, you can remake it into something. There's a quick path from recycling to brand new material in scrap metal. That one's kind of a no-brainer, but it's not mandated. Appliances, hot load appliances, that's the refrigerant appliances. So refrigerators, freezers, dehumidifiers, air conditioners that have the refrigerant freon or ammonia gas in there, those have to be handled totally separately and be sent to a facility that's certified to demand or pull the gases out in a certified collection program before that material can be scrapped as steel. And that's because if it's released to atmosphere, it causes issues with ozone and our atmosphere. So regulated material. Compressed and pressurized cylinders are a huge, huge safety concern for our workers. Mike Larson here can tell you, he's operated the baler for many years. We pull compressed and pressurized tanks off that baler all day long. Propane, the 1 pound propane tanks that ice fishermen use, somehow someone's throwing those into our cardboard bin. A quick story, I belong to the SWANA Safety Committee. The SWANA is the Solid Waste Association of North America. There was a MRF, I believe it was in Dane County, so down by Madison. They had something that they thought was just a standard, like a water softener tank, and they put it through their shred. They put it through they cut it in half with I forget the name of that word. It's a hydraulic knife, basically. Yeah, and it was a natural gas cell, a fuel cell off of a haul truck. And it blew up. They only found one half of it. The other one's a mile away somewhere. It blew the side of their machine off. No one got killed. But Compressed and pressurized tanks are a real problem in our industry, and we handle those in Dunn County.
Morgan, I know you can go through each one of these, but are you charging for something? I mean, you say you're recycling, but you've got fees on some of them.
Right, so I can,
I'm just in light of the time and the hour, I know you're gonna go through every one, but.
well, there's some importance to some, whereas other ones I'm willing to sacrifice, but ultimately it's gonna be the choice of the municipalities. So, Deox, that's the sardine cans, the aluminum aerosol cans, and the tin foil that you recycle with us. You can't throw that in an aluminum can bale. Those people don't want those items in there. All they want are aluminum cans. And if you try to do it in the markets like we're at now, your whole load is gonna get kicked back. So we create what's called a Deox bale, and those items, if we bale them separately, can be sold to aluminum refiners, but it goes through a whole separate process than it does for the aluminum can market. Non-PCB ballast, we ship those as dedicated scrap metal loads. Aluminized roll stock is some industrial material that we simply unload off a truck and put it back on a truck and sell it to somebody. Insulated wire, we do a lot of that. Number 5, polypropylene container plastics, not mandated. These are your yogurt containers, your butter containers, your tubs, things like that, the kitty litter pails, not mandated. Mixed rigid plastics, all of the laundry baskets and the shelving and the plastic totes and things like that that we make those bales from. We have a very good program for that. HMW is just the heavier mixed rigid plastic item, the heavier wall. We do the woven sacks, so those of you who bring us your bird seed sacks, your woven bird seed sacks, chicken feed, dog feed, all of that, that's polypropylene, we have that. Coroplast is coming from a business in Dunn County called Big Blue Dot of Happiness, and this is corrugated polypropylene. It's really interesting stuff. Agricultural plastic films, I know there's some farmers in the room. In the past, there was absolutely no outlet for that other than the landfill, and unfortunately it was burned or buried on a lot of farms for convenience, creating a big environmental stewardship problem. So now we have a free program for that through Revolution Plastics. It's not mandated. Neither is residential plastic film, shopping bags, shrink wrap, the wrap around your toilet paper and water bottles. All of the plastic film that we collect in Dunn County gets sent to a company called Trex, and they make synthetic deck lumber from that material. PVC vinyl siding, ink and toner cartridges, I already talked about that one. PVC is recyclable in dedicated loads. We just shipped a couple months ago 40,000 pounds of that and received about $1,200 back in revenue. Carrier stock, that is the wet strength material, the third type of fiber that we do in addition to cardboard and paper. Textiles, that's clothing recycling. Sharps, the needles collection program we have in the county, extremely valuable to residents and extremely valuable to us as waste collection workers so that we're not exposed to that when we're handling the trash out there. Used oil, used antifreeze, used oil filters, deer carcass, all of those things are opportunities for Dunn County residents. You won't find a resume like that in any other county in the state. Yes, sir.
Where do you take deer carcasses in the waste oil?
Great question. So the problem with deer carcasses is CWD, chronic wasting disease. Okay, you used to be able to landfill deer carcasses in this area. Landfills do not want the liability associated with taking carcasses because the protein called the prion associated with the CWD disease, when it's in a landfill and the deer dissolves and the leachate goes down in there, that protein stays alive. And they pump out that leachate and they send it to a wastewater treatment plant, and it survives the wastewater treatment plant. And then it's either the solids from the wastewater treatment plant are either land spread and the effluent is, clean material is flushed out into rivers or streams. That prion survives. So what they found is that CWD protein still has efficacy back in the environment once it's discharged from these processes and can be uptook then by and that's the concern with that. What we do with all of our deer carcasses, we collect them at the transfer station only in a dedicated 20-yard box. We ship it to the Barron County incinerator for 100% obliteration through incineration. And that is the only option that we have for that. We cannot send those to the landfill. They're prohibited in landfills in this area.
So because of the time, can we wrap this part up?
Yes, we can move on.
Anybody else got questions? Considering
If you'd like to have that discussion, I have few that we can certainly do that with. Yeah, so carrier stock. With the markets where they're at right now, carrier stock is considered a low-quality fiber. They want just the best cardboard and the best paper right now. Carrier stock we could sacrifice. We can't blend it with our cardboard though, because the cardboard mills are going from a 4% allowance of carrier stock down to a 2%. So we're really going to just train people to landfill, throw carrier stock away as garbage. Not a very good environmental stewardship move. From a business move, it makes sense. Okay. Vinyl siding, PVC vinyl siding. In good markets, it doesn't pay too bad, but it's extremely labor intensive for us. Vinyl siding is tough to wrangle up. We have to go out to the collection sites and bring it back to our resource recovery van and trailer. And in the baler, it takes, the one bale that probably takes the most time to do is probably a vinyl siding bale. They're extremely heavy. Like I said, we ship 40,000 pounds of that on a single load. That would be another one I would say that we could probably give up. And we could make refinements in, we can make refinements in any of these if any of these to you feel that, you know, these aren't worthwhile doing.
If I can jump in, so that's where I would submit, or I would hope that, you know, as the director, you know, with that responsibility that you're looking at cost, time, hours. That's why I was asking for a look at this non-mandated stuff that, and I hope the board gives you that authority to say, if I'm spending $20 to get $1 and there's no market and it's going to go in the landfill anyway, that you would stop that independently on your own.
Sure.
I don't know, I'm not qualified to vote on any one of those or say which one to go, but I'm hoping you would make that decision to help keep some of the costs down. And that's why I was kind of looking at what have we done over the last 5 years on personnel costs, because I know you've been very aggressive in getting some of these things, and I'm hoping you have the authority, if it's not worthwhile as a business model. You said we're a business, we got to make money, that you would, you know, stop doing it automatically. That's what I would submit there.
Well, under the new business model, those three we would certainly look at right away.
One thing I think you're looking for is, what does it cost to do each one of them? That gets charged back somehow.
We've broken that down. I've shared that with the board before, what it costs us to make a bale of each of those commodities. Now, the interesting part is that many of the mandated recyclables cost us more money to bale than what we get back for rebate. Many of the non-mandated recycling make us more money because it takes less time to bale and their cost per ton is higher. So diversification is a good thing. It's not a bad thing, it's a good thing. But you're absolutely right, there are some things in here that we do spend enough time on that in these markets don't make a lot of sense to continue.
That's the bottom line there on carrier stock, textiles, sharps, used oil. There's a market for them, right? And you recover your costs. Those don't need to go in the landfill, especially used oil and.
Well, it can't. Used oil can't. Yeah.
Okay, why is it a non-mandated one then?
Because it still needs to be disposed of properly, just not, you know, there's a lot of things that it's hazardous waste has to be disposed of properly, but it's not, you know, not mandated. It's not a required, that's under an RU mandated program, yes.
Okay, so basically we have to do something with it anyway.
Right, and if we kick that out of our program, you would still be recyclable, you would still be responsible for finding a proper home for your used oil, right? We just provide that service, all those services, under our solid waste and recycling permit, all that opportunity to you. And people do utilize every one of these non-mandated recycling. I'm seeing a lot of nods in the room, so you guys know what this stuff is. We get a lot of this stuff from residents, okay?
So would the board like to look at a later meeting on this calendar? Like you should look at Downsville as compared to what it was done. And I think we're meeting the first part of December. Is that possible? Is that something you want to vote on that tonight? Because that's part of the business plan. I think we should like maybe postpone that part of it.
We need to plan.
The board, you know, what's your feeling? Are you ready to?
I'm not sure what you're asking.
Well,
this calendar here?
Both, I mean, you have time to look at both of them, like, you know, compare them. Would you want to vote tonight on those? Either like Downsville, what they come up with, or what we had come up with? Steve?
This one hasn't been scored yet, as far as what it costs.
It's for 8 hours more than the other one. Because I have 6 hours for the 4 dumps.
Yes.
But you have to realize that if we go to this involves the input of other municipalities.
Yep.
And many of them have already stated that they're not sure that they'd want to do that. Maybe they need to research that some more, so. But we have limited time to research. We really need to put a model in place by January 1. And it needs to be some way, either a shortened model that has more cost savings, or we could continue with our current model with additional support from your municipalities. Those are the decisions we have to make.
If you wanted to raise the
Chairman,
per capita tonight.
I don't
it's
believe you
not
can
the
vote on
board.
that because it wasn't published. I don't think you can vote on that.
Right.
I think it's got to be published.
And it's still kind of part of the business plan. You know, it's incorporated like to,
This was more of an educational thing, and I
Special
don't think you
meeting,
should be
yeah.
making these decisions here tonight.
that's why, like I was saying, at our December meeting, we'd have time to really go over it and put it on the agenda.
I guess, I'm willing to consider this, but I would like staff to have time to work through
Put a
it.
cost to it.
I put
And we
that out
need- and
there
we
for
need costs.
for the
It's on the agenda.
municipalities to think about raising the per capita tonight, but that doesn't sound like that's gonna happen.
No.
I don't think you can.
You
It
can't.
hasn't been published. You can't be raising per capita.
It was up here. Yes, it was.
It's not on the agenda.
It's
So
not,
you can't vote on that tonight.
that
Depends on how you read the
Yeah,
agenda.
it's
But when you're doing budget stuff, you have to give a public
I
notice
think
of
your
14
judgment is
days.
sound. I mean, you can't just, we need to review this, internally, plus all of you need to review this as well, and whether or not it would work for your budget. And I think Gary stated that we do have a meeting next month, I believe it's December 3. So we could make that an agenda item. We do have to have a new model in place by January 1. Time is of the essence, the clock is ticking.
Well, and with no per capita increase, I don't, well, just my opinion, I don't see any of the outlying ones getting more than 4 hours. Not good.
So you feel, Morgan, that you've got enough input from the municipalities to,
I think we got some great input tonight, you bet. And I appreciate this. I mean, this is the type of thinking that, I like where you're going with this. I like the fact that people are raising their hand and saying, look, this is important to us. And you know what's important to all of you. And so we do have one more, well, less than a month, but we have a little bit of time to take another look at this. But I would say come on the 3rd, we'll make this another agenda item on the solid waste board meeting. Come prepared, do or die, to vote one way or the other.
any local government, like you please contact like Morgan or Megan there, let them know your feelings. So we have something that we can go on. We got a lot of good ideas tonight, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions, in my opinion.
And it is a very complex discussion, and the solid waste, the recycling, all of the interactions that we provide and experience in this program, it is very complex. So we do have a little bit of time to digest this, but we need to come back on December 3rd and with a commitment going forward, one way or another.
Morgan?
Yes, Frank?
The problem is, most of us will not have even our town board meetings by that time. And I think it's very unfair. I think you should stay with the plan.
We could do a special meeting if Gary, if you decided that, Frank made the comment that many of the boards have not met yet by December 3rd. So
I would say majority haven't.
Okay. So you could do a special meeting if you wanted to.
Well, that's not going to happen.
No, we got Thanksgiving. And then after all that, there's a session of public announcement for any budget amendments or anything like that, which takes a lot of time. Another 2-3 months,
For
so.
our municipality today is it, because there's no more time left.
Yeah.
There's definitely concern on staff as far as there's a lot of marketing outreach that needs to get done. Maybe once we decide business plan model to get the operating, signs put up, outreach put out, press releases, really these calls. There are holidays in here. There's a lot going on too.
I think we should try a business plan, and, not everybody will be happy, but we should give it a shot. You got 2021 to put together another program?
Start right after the first of the year.
Pardon?
We'd have to start right after the first of the year instead of at the end of the year then. Right? I mean,
We're proposing the change start January 1, because we need some spin-up time.
Right, but
Everybody
if we make a small change now, we need to be starting looking right away again, because it's
crunch
it's
time.
not, we don't have the answer. We're putting a Band-Aid on it. We're driving a Cadillac and we should be driving a Chevrolet. We need to take a goddamn good hard look at what we're doing. Pardon my language.
GMC.
So with the
GMC?
plan, you're talking about modifying the hours right now, correct? Just the hours?
Our plan?
Yes,
That's the calendar that you
the calendar that you gave, that's what you're talking about, no other cost at this end, just
Right,
the
that
hours.
is, that is at the established 2020 per capita, and one clean sweep. Ryland?
I guess I'd also like to see some of the non-mandated recyclables reevaluated as to, like you were saying, carrier stock and, you know.
Numbers,
If there's, I hate to see stuff going in landfill, but if it's bankrupting us, then it's gonna end up in landfill anyway.
I'm sure that'll be on the agenda.
So the other side of that is, so we don't want to put it in landfill. If it's a low price right now, and we still got it sitting there. We purchased 20 acres, still we get $10 a ton supposedly. And we just stack it there until it comes up. We got 20 acres.
We do have, yeah, that's a good point. Storage for us is a huge problem, obviously. We've got bales stacked everywhere. When the transfer station business model was put in place in '91, the plan of operation says everything's stored inside at all times.
So
times have changed, you know, but yeah, good point. There's some entanglements with DNR on that level, you know, to be able to store baled material over there, but I think the gist of what you're saying is squat on it until it makes money again, right? That's basically playing the stock market, and I'd love to be able to do it. I'd love to be able to do it because like aluminum cans right now, you know, 36, 38 cents a pound. Man, it pains me to sell cans like that, but I've got limited room to stack that stuff. If I had a huge warehouse, or we've talked about a bale storage area at the transfer station, which is pretty expensive to build, but if we had a warehouse where we could store the stuff, yes, we'd absolutely sit on that until the markets pick up and then boom, sell it, and we'd make our money back.
Containers are 2,000, 2,500. You can put a lot of them on 20 acres.
We've got 6 of them right now at the transfer station.
And if it comes back up, and you can sell them at the end of
Point
it
taken.
too. I mean,
Storage is a big problem for everybody.
So Morgan, let's go to like F2 instead of hours. I'd like to have everybody, you know, who's here tonight, come to our next meeting, please. December 3rd. We left the hours on.
We're done?